Chapter 1292. That won't do. Aju's face was serious. It's already hard enough for you to guard the border. As your wife, I can't drag you down. If I accept other people's things, what if they rely on you? Little brother's righteousness can't be tarnished just like that. Bai Juan was stunned. He never thought that this would be the answer. He thought that she just wanted to buy a ring for him. He did not know how to describe that feeling. He had picked up a gun to protect others for too long. He had actually forgotten the feeling of being protected. His Aju had never changed. Bai Juan chuckled and said, I really don't want to get too close to them. Yes, I can see that. Aju's eyes were wide open. She looked dull, but she was actually very smart. Bai Juan rubbed her head and led her over. The corners of his mouth were all smiles. It seemed that Aju was more suitable to be his wife than he had imagined. His girl had grown up. In fact, Aju had always been very good at reading these things. When Bai Juan walked forward, she did not forget to lean over and whisper in her little brother's ear, that President Song just now had a cunning face and cloudy eyes. He should be very fond of beautiful women. Lust is a knife above a knife. Sooner or later, something will happen to him. So little brother, you must not learn from these people, understand? I am enough for you. Bai Juan was very serious when he first listened. When he heard the last sentence, he could not help but turn around and laugh. You are enough. Isn't it? Aju was a little conflicted. She thought about her own advantages. I know how to box, I can protect you, and I can also read people's faces. I am quite versatile. Bai Juan pulled her over and added for her with a smile, why don't you say that you are very good looking? You have to be humble. Aju had a pair of round tiger eyes. She was very serious. Bai Juan now wanted to have a sofa where he could carry her up and put her on his lap. Why was she so cute? Little brother, don't smile all the time. Aju pursed her lips. Just as Bai Juan was about to speak, a reporter brought the microphone over. Hello, sir. May I ask if you are boyfriend and girlfriend? We have some questions here about the degree of tacit understanding between couples. We want to ask you. A few couples have been interviewed just now. Are you willing to accept? Bai Juan's eyes swept over. It was simple equipment, and there were a few passers-by around. It was indeed an ordinary investigation. He smiled and said, of course. Wow! That's great. I was just thinking that sir and this lady are a good match. It would be great if I could interview you. The reporter was very good at talking, and she was also very pretty. She held a microphone in one hand and a piece of paper in the other. Here's the problem. Please listen carefully. If you answered wrongly, you would be punished. Then, may I ask, when was the last time you kissed? Please answer at the same time. Aju paused, and her black gem eyes were stunned. Why did he ask such a question? Shouldn't she be asking him what his favorite food was? Ah! He had been tricked. Aju thought for a moment and tried to answer correctly. However, she didn't know why, but whenever she thought of the image of her little brother kissing her, her heart couldn't take it anymore. Even her face was a little hot. She couldn't think of anything no matter how hard she tried. The reporter was probably anxious from waiting. He asked, do you have an answer? The couples who had just been interviewed also wanted to hear the answers of these two people. After all, they were too good-looking. Beautiful things always made people stop and admire them. Aju was obviously anxious, but the more anxious she was, the more confused her mind became. At this time, Bai Juan chuckled softly. He rubbed her head with his big palm and lowered his eyes to kiss her. Then, he pressed the stunned Ju into his arms and faced the camera. He only said 2 words, "Just now, I saw you." In an instant, Ju's face turned red. She leaned against Baizhuan's chest, revealing only her 2 erect strands of hair. The reporters on the street were stunned for a moment. When they reacted, their eyes were filled with envy. There were also the girls who were watching. They looked at Baizhuan and then at their boyfriends. They couldn't help but let out a long sigh. After all, no girl would not be willing to be treated like that by her boyfriend. Such an answer were really too sweet. The boys immediately understood what his girlfriend meant. They looked at Baizhuan with resentment in their eyes. "Bro, it was one thing for you to be handsome, but why were you so good at making your girlfriend happy? Can't you give the others a chance to live, huh?" Baizhuan, on the other hand, was very calm. "Are there any other questions?" No. The reporter shook her head and only then did she come back to her senses. She glanced at the script. She had already thought of which scene to use for today's publicity. This pair was not only pleasing to the eye, but also very topical. How could it be so sweet? Unfortunately, the reporter did not know that just as she was still imagining how to make the theme. Baizhuan raised his hand as he brushed past her, and the recorded scene was blurred. After all, he was a special forces soldier, so of course, he would often carry some high-end electronic equipment. He could not appear on TV, and he could not let any video fall outside. If he was alone, it would be fine. But once Ju was here, this scene could not exist. "Sister Zhang, take a look. Why does this camera seem to have a problem? Aw. What's wrong? Can't we film it?" "No, it's just that there seems to be a video missing." The video that was missing was the video that the reporter wanted to use the most as a topic. How could this be? It was really like seeing a ghost. The reporter had been lowering her head and fiddling with the camera. When she raised her head and wanted to let the eye-catching couple record again, there was no one on the street. At this moment, Ju and Baizhuan were sitting in the Hummer. Baizhuan lifted her chin and continued the kiss just now. It was indeed sweet. On the tip of her tongue and lips, every part of her body was like eating a clear mint candy. When it bloomed in her mouth, her entire body was numb. Ju could clearly sense that this was the smell of her little brother for a long time. It smelled very good, so good that it could make people addicted. Especially when he bit her lower lip, Ju could not help but tremble. Even her eyes became wet. Baizhuan lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms. He took a deep breath and tightened his grip on the steering wheel. But after that, he did not do anything. Instead, he hugged Ju and bit her little shoulder. "We still have training in the afternoon. Let's go eat something first, and then we'll go back to school together." "Okay." Ju immediately agreed. Her classmates were still waiting for her answer. Just now, her roommates had sent her WeChat messages. She really should go back and tell them. Chapter 1293. However, there was one more thing. Ju raised her head and said, "Little brother, I'm getting married just like that. Shouldn't you tell my parents?" However, the answer was somewhat unexpected. "I talked to my mother-in-law on the phone last night." Baizhuan turned the steering wheel and turned his head to look at Ju. "She has already agreed." Ju's round tiger eyes were stunned for a moment before she said, "Since she has agreed, then I won't make the call." "Okay." Baizhuan stopped and rubbed her head. Ju realized that her little brother especially liked to touch her head, so she moved closer and let Baizhuan touch her head. Baizhuan really found it a little difficult to control himself. He always wanted to kiss her and hug her. He was clearly still driving. When did he become so unprincipled? However, he had never had any principles in front of her. Bai Juan was not lying. He had indeed spoken to Hellion Vivian on the phone last night. No matter how much he wanted to abduct his Jew, he had to go through the other party's parents. This was the least he could do. And it was because of this phone call. Hellion Vivian smiled. Have you ever thought about what if I don't agree? Yes, Bai Juan replied. But I have to make this call. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows, and the smile on the corner of her mouth became even wider. Bai Juan, I really didn't misjudge you. I'll leave it to you. But you know my two brats. If they find out that you abducted a Jew, you'll suffer. Bai Juan naturally knew how difficult it was to deal with his two brothers-in-law. Including marrying a Jew, he had to agree to Hellion Vivian's conditions. He did not tell a Jew anything. Her girl only needed to be happy to be his bride. She did not need to worry about anything else. Bai Juan was also very clear that it was better to keep the matter of him marrying a Jew a secret. But he was even more clear that his Jew wanted to share the joy with others. You can call Grandpa. Bai Juan handed the phone to her. A Jew did not take it. Instead, she smiled and took out her phone. I have Grandpa Bai's phone number. Use mine to call him. Okay. When a Jew was on the phone, the hair on her head was still standing up. No matter how she looked at it, she looked cute. Old Master Bai, who had just finished a meeting, was immediately amused when he saw the incoming call. A Jew, why did you call grandfather? A Jew laughed at first, and her voice was very bright and clear. Grandpa Bai, I'm married to little brother, and I even got a certificate. I'm a member of the Bai family from now on. What did you say? Elder Bai suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Get married. Get a marriage license. No. When did his grandson come back? Why didn't he know? When a Jew heard old Master Bai's roar, she was also stunned. Grandfather, are you not happy that I married little brother? How could this be? Old Master Bai immediately denied it and quickly organized his tone. A Jew, Grandpa looks forward to the stars and the moon every day. I hope that the two of you can be together as soon as possible. Grandpa had long recognized you as his granddaughter-in-law. Grandpa didn't even let Bai Juan meet those people he had introduced to him. My grandson is a Jew, right? A Jew was overjoyed when she heard that. It's also Grandpa's. Can you not sell me around like this? Bai Juan came over with a light smile and gave a Jew a suggestion. Let him give you a gift. A granddaughter-in-law must have a gift. Old Master Bai had already heard his grandson's voice on the other end of the phone. Now that he was close, he could not help but ask, when did you come back? Is what a Jew said true? Are you married? Have you registered your marriage? When he said the word registered, old Master Bai's voice trembled. When did this brat register their marriage? A Jew was still young, right? Could she register it? But on second thought, his grandson must have used some kind of method again. Old Master Bai was a tough person and had been a good soldier all his life. But at this moment, he chose to turn a blind eye because he knew better than anyone how much his grandson had sacrificed in order to marry a Jew. He had gone through a few cold bones and returned full of injuries. Even when he was taking out the bullets on the hospital bed, he was still chanting that person's name. It was time to give him some reward. This grandson of his had propped up the Bai family and protected the territory when other people should have been in love. Now, he would let him do whatever he wanted. Forget it, Grandpa won't ask you anymore. You brat, there's no truth in your mouth. As old Master Bai spoke, he added, a Jew, when you have time, bring your little brother to visit Grandpa. Grandpa is in southern Tibet, and no one dares to play chess with Grandpa. When a Jew heard this, she immediately nodded. October is almost here. When the school has a break, I will fly over. Then what about your wedding banquet? When do you plan to hold it? The more old Masterby spoke, the happier he became. Why don't we hold it in these 2 days? If old Lizzie and the others know that my grandson has married a wife, they will definitely be envious. He, I will call them in a while. As for your Grandpa Xiao, I want them to know that my Aju is still the most promising. She brought him home so early. Okay. Aju nodded even more vigorously this time. Bai Juan held his forehead when he heard this. Chief Bai, it seems that I am your biological grandson, right? Speaking of bringing her home, it should be him bringing her home, right? Go. Don't disturb my conversation with Aju. When old Master Bai met Aju, he was like an old child who had returned to his childhood. Bai Juan could not do anything about them, but he still answered old Master Bai's question. Aju is still in school. It will not be good for her to hold a wedding like this. The army will not allow soldiers to fall in love with students. Although we are legal, the wedding will wait until Aju is an adult. Old Master Bai was so smart, how could he not understand what his grandson meant? These things were originally small matters. It was just that his grandson did not want Aju to suffer a little. After all, getting married while underage would always attract criticism. Aren't you afraid that Aju will meet a better man in university? Old Master Bai could not help but tease his grandson. University A is a place where talents gather. If I'm not wrong, you will only be back for a few days. You are about to return to the army, right? If you don't announce it, are you really not worried? How could he not be worried? The more he liked her, the more uneasy he would feel. These were the secrets hidden in the deepest part of Bai Juan's heart. Even if they got married, they would have to face how far they would go and what would happen in between. He could not predict it either. However, there was only one thing he was sure of. That was that he would never let go. Even if this certificate was obtained in a hurry, he still had to hold it firmly in his hand. Chapter 1294. But before he could say anything, Aju opened her mouth and said to the other side of the phone, Grandpa, don't talk nonsense. What can little brother be worried about? I like little brother so much because I was afraid that he would run away, so I proposed to him. Old Master Bai was stunned when he heard this. Then, he laughed out loud. Aju, be good. Your little brother won't be able to run away in this lifetime. Yes, I know. Military marriages are protected by the law. You can't get a divorce casually. Aju held Bai Juan's hand and said very seriously, from now on, little brother will be mine. Although listening to Aju's confession was a very beautiful thing, Bai Juan also knew that if he continued to talk, the old man would laugh endlessly. He decisively took the phone from Aju's hand and hung up the phone. Bai Juan knew very well what his grandfather was like. He reckoned that he had already started to call those grandpas in the courtyard to show off what happened today. Really? Bai Juan smiled and shook his head. Aju did not understand what he was laughing at. She only decided that her stomach was very empty. She reached out and touched it. She raised her head and said, Little brother, I'm hungry. I know. I'll take you to a place to eat now. Bai Juan said as he patted her head. Her breath was warm and her face was handsome. It could be said that when he treated Aju, Bai Juan had never been ungentle. The two of them went to a vegetarian restaurant. Usually, restaurants like this were not cheap in good places, and the environment was also elegant. And the restaurant in front of them was one of the most famous deep alleys in the entire capital. Because it was quiet and secretive, it was deeply liked by the upper-class people and celebrities. This restaurant had been open for 3 years. It was said that the real boss had never appeared. Everyone only knew that he was a high-ranking disciple who came from the military compound, but no one knew who he was. However, there was one thing. No one dared to cause trouble here, and no paparazzi followed them here. It was very simple. If anyone did anything here, they would pay the price the next day. Similarly, this restaurant was not like other vegetarian restaurants, which rejected ordinary people because of the good environment. The dishes in the restaurant were definitely worth the money. As long as you could find this restaurant, the chef would give you the best cooking skills. Even if you only ordered a bowl of Beijing zhajiang noodles, there was plenty of sauce. Fresh cucumber strips and shredded green onions were added into the noodles, and half a spoonful of oil was sprinkled on top. The piercing aroma of the noodles filled the air, and together with the shop's special grapefruit herbal tea, it was extremely delicious. Authentic taste, childhood memories, every bite made people want to give a thumbs up. According to their chef, the boss had instructed them to make the noodles well. Other than white rice, his girl's favorite food was fried sauce made with eggs, accompanied by a large bowl of noodles. When she was young, she could eat several large bowls at a time. Only then did people know that the owner of the restaurant opened the restaurant because of the girl he was talking about. There was only one word in the name of the restaurant, temple. Mahogany tiles were used as tiles. After Bai Jun brought a Ju in, a waiter in a Cheongsam immediately came up to them with a smile. "Sir, how many people are there?" "The two of you." "Yes, sir, this way please." The waiter arranged for them to sit by the window. From where a Ju sat, she could see the flowers blooming outside and the green stone wall. The ancient charm was very pleasing. A Ju inexplicably felt that this restaurant was very comfortable. The waiter looked at her and smiled. "Miss, I don't know if you have a Ju in your name. If you do, tell me in advance. Our restaurant will provide a free order service." "Free?" A Ju's beautiful tiger eyes became round. "So good." The waiter introduced, "This is the rule since we opened the restaurant. It has never changed. Then I have a Ju in my name." A Ju's face was serious. "Bai Li Ju, but I eat a lot. Do you want it for free too? Will you lose money?" Originally, the waiter needed the customer to show their ID card for her to confirm their name. Now, the waiter did not even ask for the ID card. His thin lips curled up. "No, miss, you can eat without worry. Our restaurant likes girls who can eat." After a Ju heard this, she turned her head and said to Bai Jun, "Little brother, this restaurant is so cute. It likes girls who can eat, and it's free." Bai Jun did not look surprised. Instead, he pulled her hand over and let her look at the menu together. He asked in a low voice, "Do you want to eat noodles with soy sauce?" "Yes." A Ju was obedient. She liked to eat everything. Bai Jun rubbed her forehead and elegantly returned the menu to the waiter. "Please have 2 big bowls of noodles with soy sauce. One of the bowls has to have more sauce. The eggs have to be 90% cooked." This was the first time the waiter had encountered a request for the eggs in the noodles with soy sauce. He paused for a moment before saying with a smile, "Yes, sir." A Ju was still touching her stomach. She looked at the stir-fried dishes on the next table and then looked at the little brother who was very close to her. In the end, she still looked at Bai Jun's face. It seemed that the little brother looked more delicious. "A Ju." Bai Jun seemed to sigh and put down the teacup at his fingertips. Then, he turned around and held her chin. When no one was paying attention, he gently bit her lips. His voice was very low and a little hoarse. "How many times have I told you not to look at me like that when we are outside?" A Ju's face was also red from being bitten. Her eyes were quiet, but her hands were not idle. She took Bai Jun's hand and wrote the word "hungry" on his palm. She wrote it a total of 3 times. Bai Juan only felt something gently sweep across his heart. It was like a feather, unbelievably soft. Outside the window, there was a faint osmanthus fragrance. The early autumn wind was very comfortable. If only time could stop like this. That was the deepest thought in Bai Juan's heart at that moment. However, he knew better than anyone that it was not the time yet. In another 3 years, he would be discharged from the army. "Sir, miss, your noodles." The waiter smiled faintly and brought 2 large bowls up. The zhaojiang noodles were arranged very nicely. Other than the sauce, there were also red and green side dishes. 2 large cups of herbal tea accompanied them. At the bottom of the bowl was a tiger-headed fish swimming. Beside it was a lotus root and lotus leaves. The shape of the lotus leaves was modified to make an umbrella for the herbal tea, so that it could retain the fragrance when it entered the mouth. Just such a beautiful plate presentation was enough to make one's appetite move. Bai Juan took the wooden chopsticks and first put balsamic vinegar in the zhaojiang noodles. Then, he scooped a spoonful of chili oil and poured it over. He mixed the noodles back and forth before handing it to Aju. Aju's face was small, and the bowl was especially big. When she buried her head in eating, her entire small face seemed to be buried in it. The 2 strands of hair on her head were still standing up. It was not like what Bai Juan had said, that she was like a cat. The more Aju ate, the brighter her tiger eyes became. It was like the taste of the noodles made by the little brother when she was taking the exam in the past. Chapter 1295. Bai Juan tilted his head and glanced at her. When he saw her white and tender teeth biting the noodles, he suddenly remembered that when Aju had just arrived at the Bai family, she was too young and still had a small head. When she ate a piece of vegetable, she had to bite it hard. She could always make the hearts of the group of people in the courtyard melt. Now, she was still like this. Bai Juan laughed. He also picked up his wooden chopsticks and stuffed a big mouthful of noodles into his mouth. When he was with Aju, he would really eat more than usual. It was not a matter of a day or 2 for a child to eat. However, others did not think so. Especially the 2 women who had just been brought in by the waiter. They were wearing white coats outside and military uniforms inside. Captain Bai. The first woman to speak was very elegant. She seemed to have come out from a big family. Her skin was well maintained. When she looked at Bai Juan, her eyes were filled with unconcealable joy. This woman was none other than the female military doctor who had confessed to Bai Juan back then, He Chuchiao. She did not expect to see Bai Juan here. Her face was slightly flushed. However, when her eyes swept over and landed on Aju, a trace of sadness quickly flashed across her eyes. Yi Xiaoxiao, who was following beside He Chuchiao, knew what her good friend was thinking. She nudged her with her arm and said in a low voice, "That girl is younger than Captain Bai. It's very likely that she's a friend's sister or something. What are you thinking about here? If we don't confirm our relationship, we still have a chance." When He Chuchiao heard her good friend's words, her face turned even redder. However, she really took a big step forward. "Captain Bai, what a coincidence. How's the injury on your back?" "Little brother, you have an injury on your back." Aju was still eating her noodles. When she heard this question, she immediately raised her face. That stunning face of hers was better than He Chuchiao and the others in minutes. Yi Xiaoxiao's heart also sank. Bai Juan did not have any intention of paying attention to He Chuchiao. Instead, he used his fingertips to wipe the corner of Aju's lips. His smile was warm. "It was a long time ago. I want to have a checkup. I'll have a checkup when I get back." Aju was very serious in this aspect. However, Bai Juan laughed. He had other business. Okay, I'll let you check my whole body. Aju was such a cute child. No matter how smart she was only thinking about the injuries on Baizhuan's body. How could she have thought that this sentence was a trap? She immediately nodded and agreed. However, it was this kind of interaction that made He Chuchiao's heart ache more and more. No one knew that when she was his attending physician and wanted to help him, he would not let her touch his hospital gown. On the contrary, the soldiers under his command were not rejected by him. But now, he actually treated a girl like this. There wasn't the slightest trace of coldness and unapproachable indifference from that time. Why did this happen? Anne. And he didn't seem to want to talk to her at all. He Chuchiao's face was about to bleed from embarrassment. Yi Xiaoxiao, who was following behind her, had never been treated like this either. Everyone in the restaurant was looking at them. She and Chu Qiao were the flowers of the army. Wherever they went, they were envied by others. This Captain Bai was a soldier after all. No matter how noble his appearance was, it could not hide the impolite ruffian aura on his body. Just by seeing that he only ordered 2 big bowls of zhajiang noodles here, it could be seen. She reached out and pulled He Chuchiao. She said with a fake smile, "Chuchiao, let's not disturb Captain Bai and his little girlfriend from eating zhajiang noodles. You, with such good conditions, what kind of man can't you find? The more polite you are to some people, the more excited they will be. I've heard before that some ordinary office workers who know about this place always come to take a look. Although the other dishes are not expensive, for outsiders like them, it's always painful to order them. Therefore, this zhajiang noodles have become their first choice. I didn't know before, but now that I've seen Captain Bai's girlfriend, I finally understand this principle. Zhajiang noodles can fill your stomach, don't you think so?" She didn't finish her sentence. There was a loud bang. The small bowl in Baizhuan's hand brushed past her ear and shattered heavily on the ground. Yi Xiaoxiao was so scared that her face turned pale at first, then she shouted, "Where do you think this is? The army? Even in the army, when is it your turn to be arrogant as the captain? We gave you face before because He Chuchiao had a good impression of you. Now you're taking advantage of us, aren't you?" In fact, whether it was Yi Xiaoxiao or He Chuchiao, they had only seen the injured Baizhuan back then. As medical staff, they would bandage the injured soldiers' wounds every day. However, they did not know Baizhuan's name, nor did they know why he was injured and what his identity was. This was a secret even to their minister, let alone them. Back then, He Chuchiao had asked a question or two because she wanted to chase after Baizhuan. However, those soldiers all laughed and said, it was an accident during training. Therefore, Yi Xiaoxiao believed that Baizhuan had no background. After all, when he was injured, no one with a high military rank came over. How could Yi Xiaoxiao know that no one went because they had received Baizhuan's order? He did not want his grandfather to see him in such a sorry state. It was inevitable that the old man would be sad. He also did not want Aju to know that his girl should not see this blood. At that time, he thought that he would come back to life. He had to come back to life. Otherwise, he would not be at ease no matter who he handed over to his Aju. The news had been sealed at the highest level, so how could anyone go to check on the injury? However, Yi Xiaoxiao took it for granted that Baizhuan had no background, so she dared to challenge him like this. Soon, the noise here attracted a large number of waiters. Yi Xiaoxiao pointed at Baizhuan and said to the waiters, "This person is causing trouble in the restaurant." He was also the one who broke the bowl. He didn't even inquire about what kind of place the temple was before coming to show off. When the waiters heard this, they stretched out their hands and said, "Sir, please leave this restaurant immediately, or else." The chef, who had never come out before, actually hurriedly walked to Baizhuan's side and directly interrupted them. "All of you, shut up." The waiters paused. A smile appeared on the chef's face. Young master, long time no see. When I heard the servant say that the eggs should be 90% cooked, I wondered if you were back. As expected, it's really you. Young master. In an instant, not only did the smug expression on Yi Xiaoxiao's face freeze, but even the waiters beside her were extremely shocked. Chapter 1296. Bai Juan stood up with one hand in his pocket. He didn't even look at Yi Xiaoxiao and the others. He only said to the chef, "Old Chin, we haven't seen each other for more than 2 years, right? Ever since you handed this shop over to me, I've only seen you once in the year before last. After that, I've never seen you again." Old Chin treated Bai Juan very respectfully. "Young master, don't worry. Everything in this shop is done according to your instructions. There are no changes at all." Old Chin still remembered that 3 years ago, a youth in a school uniform found him in the Bai family's logistics army and said that he was going to be a soldier. He asked if he was willing to make a bowl of zhaojiangmian with him. Unlike ordinary zhaojiangmian, the zhaojiangmian that the youth wanted to make was not made with meat. Instead, it was made with scrambled eggs and then boiled with sauce. Old Chen was an old chef. This was the first time he had seen someone make zhaojiangmian like this. He instinctively blocked his hand and said, "Young master, this zhaojiangmian is not made like this. This sauce must be made with meat to taste good." At that time, the youth only smiled and said to him, "My girl is a disciple who has returned to the secular world. She doesn't eat meat." Only then did Old Chin know that there were some people who were willing to wash away their lead and make a bowl of zhaojiangmian with eggs for the sake of the existence in their hearts. If it was a young master from another courtyard, Old Chin might not even care about him. However, because of this young master's sincere efforts, Old Chin also picked up the pot and studied with Bai Juan how to make an ordinary bowl of zhaojiangmian unexpected. Finally, they succeeded. Everyone who ate it was full of praise. At this time, the youth proposed to open a private restaurant, and he would be the owner and chef. Old Chen was a boorish person, so he didn't know these things. In addition, he was already old, so he didn't immediately nod. Bai Juan smiled and said, "Old Chen, don't worry. Someone will do the other things." Old Chen finally agreed, but he thought again. Isn't young master going to be a soldier? Why is he still opening a restaurant? Old Chen still remembered that the sky had just turned dark, and there was still a streak of red in the western sky. The young man stood there with his back straight and said in a low voice, "It's because I'm leaving that I don't want her to go hungry. With this restaurant here, if she doesn't have money one day, she won't have to eat pancakes on the street. She looks dull, but she has a big appetite. She gets hungry easily. If there's not enough food, it won't be enough for her. So much effort." He just didn't want to starve his girl. Elder Chen had lived for most of his life, but this was the first time he had seen someone like this. Feeling moved, he immediately got to work. This was also the reason why as long as a girl with a Hjo in her name entered the restaurant, everything would be free of charge. At this time, when Old Chen looked at the young man again, he couldn't help but feel that time was peaceful. The young master was no longer the young master of the past. From his movements, one could see the strength of someone who had been to the border. However, the look in his eyes did not change. It was deep and full of righteousness. "Chef Chen, who is this?" The waiter at the side asked carefully. After all, Chef Chen's identity was not ordinary. Someone who could make him call him young master. Old Chen glanced at him and said, "This is the real boss of our restaurant, Bai Juan, young master Bai." Bai Juan. As soon as these 2 words were said, someone in the private room stuck out his head and looked out. The mystery about this vegetarian restaurant was finally solved. It turned out that the boss behind it was none other than the well-known young Master Bai. Everyone who came out of the courtyard admired and worshipped Bai Juan. Even those young masters who ate, drank, and played all day long had to bow down when they saw him. How could they not bow down? A person's credit was earned by themselves. They did not use the slightest bit of family connections. It was completely different from those who took the family's money and earned it. Is it really that young Master Bai? It looks like it. I heard from my father that his military rank is already a major. My father talks about other people's children in front of me all day long. Thinking about it carefully, this Bai Juan is even younger than me. Chief Xiao specifically named him as the successor. This is really incomparable. No wonder no one dares to cause trouble here. The main reason is that it's comfortable to stay here. Young Master Bai is not like us, who casually makes things difficult for anyone. You heard what that woman said just now. She was clearly making fun of the people that young Master Bai brought. This definitely can't be tolerated. She's not bad looking, but her words carry the smell of money. Pfft. This time, she was probably dumbfounded. Yi Xiao was not just dumbfounded. Her entire face was pale. Bai Juan. Only then did she know what his real name was. Naturally, she also knew his family background. It was the young master that they did not even dare to compare to. At first, Yi Xiao thought that her status was higher than his, but now she realized what the gap was. Captain Bai, why didn't you say earlier that you were? Yi Xiao still wanted to say something. Bai Juan glanced over from the corner of his eyes and interrupted her coldly. Old Chin, invite these two people out. In the future, our restaurant is forbidden from letting such people in. Yes. Old Chin gestured to the waiters at the side. Yi Xiao and the other two felt as if they had been slapped in the face. Of course, they could not stay in this place anymore, but they had lost all their face. In the future, they might be laughed at in the circle. Ajul rolled her round tiger eyes and looked at this scene. Suddenly, she said, "Little brother, are you also very popular in the army?" Bai Juan smiled and said, "I'm not sure either." Liar. Ajul's mouth twitched. Such a big peach blossom. Bai Juan was still pretending. No. Why didn't I see it? Little brother, you have to be honest. Ajul educated him seriously. Her big eyes turned around again and she said, "But you also saw that those women still like the Bai family more than you. I'm different. I like you as a person. Think about it carefully, am I still the best?" When Old Chin heard such a theory, he could not help but laugh out loud. So this young lady had been fooling around for a long time just to praise her family. Ajul turned her head and saw that the chef was laughing. She immediately felt embarrassed and lowered her head to burrow into Bai Juan's arms. Bai Juan reached out and hugged her as if he was hugging his own child. Of course, my Ajul is the best. It had always been. There was only this one person. That was why she did not care about his background. She was only good to him because he was him. Chapter 1297. Old Chen was stunned. He had never seen young Master smile like this before. Whether it was the youth back then or after he became a man, his eyes had always been as calm as ink, as if he was a person in a painting. But now, seeing him coaxing the person in his arms, the corners of his mouth and the tips of his eyebrows were full of smiles. He was really happy. It was not like a few years ago when he was silent when he saw him. "Young Master, I think this is your girl." Old Chen was smart and guessed right. Bai Juan raised Ajul's hand and kissed it before saying, "She's my wife now." Old Chen could not help but be shocked. His eyes shook a few times before he said, "Congratulations." Young master, I'll go to the kitchen to add some dishes. No. It's the two of you. Celebrate. He really did not think too much. Old Chin also did not ask about Aju's age. He always felt that it was not easy for the young master to be with the girl he loved. Although that girl did not seem to know anything. But this was really something to be happy about, wasn't it? Bai Juan did not refuse. Instead, he smiled and said, "Go ahead. I guess she's not full yet." Okay. Old Chin was full of energy. The people on the other side were still looking at Bai Juan's table, but no one dared to come over. This was because Bai Juan's entire aura seemed to be saying that he did not want to be disturbed. Aju sat beside him. She ate whatever Bai Juan gave her. Old Chin thought that Aju did not know anything. In fact, when Old Chin said that Bai Juan was the owner of this shop, Aju understood everything. Why would he give a girl with a 9 in her name for free? It was all because Bai Juan had been thinking about her from the beginning to the end. Aju raised her eyes and buried her head in Bai Juan's arms again. What's wrong? What a gentle voice. Why was there a person who was so gentle to her since she was young? That person was clearly not much older than her. But he had to be her father and mother. When she was young, she had chicken pox. He was not even afraid of infection and kept hugging her. Old Master Bai was not at home. Although no one in the military compound dared to provoke the Bai family. However, some distant relatives of the Bai family who were related to her by blood would often disturb her because of her appearance. They said that she was not a descendant of the Bai family and did not deserve to stay in the Bai family. Someone even told the little brother that when she grew up, she would definitely covet the Bai family's property and asked the little brother to quickly chase her away. There were also people who said that the little brother was not worthy of this family. He was young and did not think much. How could he just casually adopt a child? At the time, the little big brother was hugging her and sitting in the seat that Grandpa Bai often sat in. He looked down at the group of people even though there was no one behind him to support him. Even though he was still a child. However, like a king, he only said one sentence to those people, "All of you, get out of here. I am the head of the Bai family, not you." At that time, she knew that her little brother would protect her for the rest of her life. Aju reached out and grabbed the corner of Bai Juan's clothes. Bai Juan didn't ask her anything else. He rubbed her head and kissed the top of her head. Later, when Aju was happy, she ate another bowl of jjiang noodles. However, after getting into the car, her stomach was a little bulging. She lowered her head and touched it with her hand. She said in a small voice, "I'm full." She didn't expect Bai Juan to hear her. He didn't drive directly. Instead, he reached out his hand and began to gently rub her stomach. He smiled faintly. It was very pleasant to hear. Aju always felt that the way she got along with the little brother was very familiar. She tilted her head and thought for a moment before pulling up a video. It was a celebrity who took a picture of his little brother after eating. His little brother was very cute. His eyelashes were long as he patted his little stomach. The celebrity's voice was very gentle. "You're full. Come and see your brother." As expected, it was very similar. Aju poked her face. Bai Juan didn't know what she was thinking. There was still training in the afternoon. The car stopped at the school. There was another round of military training. During the break, the people in the class hurriedly pulled Aju to the side. "Woolly Aju, why did you only come to school now? The sisters have been waiting for you anxiously." Aju touched her head. "I had something to do this morning." Oh, then did you ask the questions that the sisters asked you to ask?" Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Aju smiled brightly. "Yes, I did. Then what kind of person does Instructor Bai like? Those people asked again. Aju pointed with her finger. Me. As soon as these words were said, it immediately attracted a wave of boos. Please, Woolly Aju, you already answered this answer last time. It seems that she didn't get the answer. Instructor Bai might not tell her. Poor child, I originally wanted to use her beauty to mislead Instructor Bai. Instructor Bai has known Aju for a longer time than we have. Perhaps he has long been immune to Aju's beauty. You're right. The group of people began to gather together and whisper. Only the few people in the dormitory pulled Aju over and brought her to the side. Did you really ask Instructor Bai yesterday? Aju nodded. Yes. What did Instructor Bai say? Aju replied, he said he likes me. What about you? What did he say? Aju tilted her head. I said I like little brother too. And then? This was the main point. According to Instructor Bai's personality, he would definitely pounce on her after confirming that the two of them had thought it through. They wanted to listen to the live broadcast. Verbal live broadcast. And then? Oh, Aju said, feeling that she understood. And then we were together. Now we are boyfriend and girlfriend. Her roommate bumped her shoulder and said very seriously, Student Aju, with our unwavering dormitory friendship, you should tell us the truth. Don't beat around the bush with your sisters. Be good and tell us the truth. Tell us what? Aju blinked. Could it be that they already knew about her marriage with little brother? Her roommate said again, of course, tell us how you spent last night. I heard that soldiers are especially good at that. Was it because you were too tired yesterday that you didn't come this morning? We all know. When Aju heard this, she realized what they were talking about. Her white jade-like face turned red for a moment before she said, we didn't. No. Her roommates were stunned. Didn't you say that you moved out to live with Instructor Bai? You didn't even live together. Aju nodded. Then, with a small face, she said very seriously, actually, I also feel that it's time for me to pounce on little brother. Let's do it tonight. It's the wedding night. Her roommates were speechless. Wait a minute, they had no intention of letting Aju send herself into the tiger's mouth. Chapter 1298. 2 p.m. in the afternoon. The 9th day of military training. The students were used to running and standing in a military posture. The more energy they expended, the more food they ate. Everyone had a big bowl of rice, eating with all their heart in the cafeteria. No one knew that at this time, in the Civil Affairs District, which was only a street away from a university, a limited edition sports car with smooth lines drove through the gate with a sharp sound. No one knew who was driving. It was completely blood red, carrying a thick arrogance and indescribable nobility. The strangest thing was that the car seemed to have disappeared and reappeared after being driven by him. Ordinary people would think that their eyes were playing tricks on them. If an exorcist were to come at this time, they would be able to sense that it was caused by the soaring demonic aura. With a swoosh, the sports car came to a stop downstairs. The person in the driver's seat was still lying lazily on the steering wheel. His long and narrow eyes seemed to emit light, extremely beautiful. He placed his finger on his chin, lifting his head to look at the rooftop, a sinister look on his face. This is the district where Director Huang lives. Seems like it. The person sitting beside him turned the notebook in his hand, smiling faintly. The information I hacked shows that the address is here. The person raised a brow. Then let's go down and ask him properly. Little sister is clearly underage. How did he handle the procedures for her? Okay. It was a light voice, but it couldn't hide the blackness in his voice. Two equally outstanding men stepped out of the sports car from the driver's seat. They were about the same height, almost the same. One of them was wearing an ivory handmade windbreaker, smiling like a spring breeze, holding a business notebook in his hand, making him look like a prince. The other one was wearing a pure black leather cap on his head, military boots, and leather pants on his lower body, and a jacket with tassels on his upper body. If someone else wore such an outfit, it would only make people feel that it was gaudy, but when he wore it, it only showed his charm and nobility. A big shot among big shots, a superstar among superstars. If a girl passed by now, she would definitely recognize the person tossing the car keys upwards. It was none other than the nation's big brother who had just filmed The Path of the Devil and became popular throughout Asia, Bailey Shangxie. Standing beside him was Enchanting. The two brothers walked into the elevator one after the other and pressed the button for the 16th floor. Director Huang should be the only one at home now. Enchanting closed the business notebook and smiled faintly. This is suitable for talking. He just ordered takeout. This is a good reason to open the door. Bailey Shangxie listened from the side with one hand in his pocket and the other hand reaching out to brush the bangs in front of his eyes. Brother. Enchanting was helpless. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm not a child anymore. You can leave this kind of thing to me. Bailey Shangxie's face was a little too handsome, but his voice was hard to resist. Stand still. Enchanting had no choice but to let him tidy her hair. She moved her eyes and asked, then who will play the role of the delivery man? Me. Bailey Shangxie held her hand and walked out of the elevator. They walked to room 1602 and knocked on the door. At this moment, Director Huang was hugging his beloved plush pillow and watching a military drama. His expression was extremely fascinated. That's right. In fact, Director Huang liked plush pillows very much. This was also the reason why Bai Juan gave him the nickname of Weasel. It had to be said that Director Huang was still very vigilant. After all, he had to maintain his strict and domineering image in front of his wife and children. At this moment, when he heard someone knocking on the door, he suddenly jumped up as if he had been cheated. He put away his things and asked in a low voice, "Who is it?" "Hello, sir. The takeout you ordered has arrived." Bailey Shangxie was indeed worthy of being the best actor. His voice had changed, so no one could hear any flaws. Director Huang had indeed ordered takeout. He did not dare to go to work in the bureau these 2 days. He had also instructed his subordinates that no matter who asked, they should tell them that he had gone out on a trip. Wasn't there a popular saying now? The world is so big. I want to see it. Director Huang thought that no matter how smart those two young masters were, they should not have thought that he did not go anywhere and was just hiding at home. After all, he had really bought a plane ticket, but he did not board the plane. Now, his car was still in the airport parking lot and had not been driven back. This was all to create an illusion. The more Director Huang thought about it, the more he felt that he was smart. It was just that sometimes, it was inconvenient to eat, and his wife had time outside. He did not know how to cook, and it was even more dangerous to go out, so he could only order takeout. Director Huang let out a long sigh and then opened the door with a serious expression. In fact, he was so hungry that his stomach was growling. He could not wait to get his things immediately. But the moment he opened the door, he was dumbfounded. Although it was only a crack, it was enough for Bailey Shangxie's long legs to stretch out and block his action of closing the door. Director Huang, what a coincidence. So you're at home. We thought you had gone to the grassland of Inner Mongolia. After all, the world is so big. We have to go out and take a look, don't you think so? As Bailey Shangxie's voice pressed in, the surrounding temperature became colder and colder. Director Huang's forehead was immediately covered in sweat. Hellion Chinchin smiled and said, "Brother, let's go in first before we talk." "Okay, come in." Bailey Shangxie pushed the door open. Director Huang was speechless. Whose house was this? Director Huang has become smarter. Hellion Chinchin sat down and praised him first. Director Huang stopped and said proudly, "You're flattering me." Who knew that Hellion Chinchin's next sentence was, "You even believe that the most dangerous place is the safest." Director Huang was speechless. Could she finish her sentence in one go? "Did you give Bai Juan's marriage certificate?" Compared to Hellion Chinchin, Bailey Shangxie was the most dangerous. There was never the word turn in his dictionary. His thin lips were cold. Director Huang wiped his sweat. "I couldn't not give it to him." He had already written the application and it had been approved by the higher-ups. Moreover, when I clicked on confirmation, it was also approved. Only then would the certificate be formed. Wait a minute. Hellion Chinchin narrowed her eyes. "You mean it was approved by the system?" Director Huang nodded. "Yes." Hellion Chinchin lowered her eyes and then met Bailey Shangxia's gaze. The two brothers thought of the same person at the same time. That was their mother. Their mother actually agreed. The two brothers looked at each other again. Then, Hellion Chinchin stood up and said to Director Huang with a faint smile, "Since Director Huang has applied for leave, then stay at home for 7 days. You have to maintain this appearance. After all, you're the one who let them register their marriage." Chapter 1299. Maintain this appearance and not change. Just let him not go out for 7 days. This was too unbearable. However, this was already much better than he had imagined. He had thought that these two young masters would cut him into pieces. After all, when they came, they did look like that. But he didn't know why, but the two of them left after this. After returning to the sports car, Hellion Chinchin said, "Since mother has agreed, let's not make a fuss. After all, my little sister also likes Bai Juan." Bailey Shangxie sneered. That kid obviously had a premeditated plan. In the future, don't be like your little sister, who can just come over and abduct him. Hellion Chinchin. Did anyone dare to abduct him? Speak. Bailey Shangxie lowered his voice again and said, "All of you, why do you want to get married? Do all humans have to get married?" Hellion Chinchin put away the business book. "Brother, I don't have a girlfriend yet, so I won't be abducted by anyone." Bailey Shangxie glanced at him and the corners of his mouth curled up. He looked very happy as if something had happened. "Let's go." "Where to?" Hellion Chinchin raised her eyebrows. "Shouldn't you fly directly to Spain to film?" Bailey Shangxie lazily knocked on the steering wheel. "I'm not interested in going to Spain. The girls there are very tanned. I like to eat white." Hellion Chinchin face-bombed. The food that her brother spoke of was definitely different from what everyone thought of. "To your school." Bailey Shangxia's voice fell. Hellion Chinchin paused. "Why are you going to our school?" "It's the last year of your senior year. Your school leader called home and asked your parents to attend the school meeting," Bailey Shangxie said calmly. Hellion Chinchin asked, "So why do you want to go?" Bailey Shangxie pressed the tip of his tongue against his canine teeth and asked in return, "Am I not considered your parent?" Hellion Chinchin. This answer. He actually had nothing to say. Bailey Shangxia's eyes darkened, and unbridled devil qi overflowed. Even if he did not obstruct, the brat surnamed Bai would not be able to stay here for long. Thinking of this, as a brother, Bailey Shangxie finally calmed down. With a wicked smile on his face, he drove into the bustling city center. The sky darkened bit by bit. Dusk. Night was about to fall. In the apartment closest to a university, the aroma had already spread from the kitchen to the living room. There were 4 dishes and a soup on the dining table. The red and green dishes were especially beautiful. Every dish was Aju's favorite. When the rice was chewed in her mouth, her lips and teeth emitted a faint fragrance. Perhaps many people would think that it was not good for a man to be in the kitchen. But that was because many people had never seen Baizhuan and a certain highness cook. Aju watched these 2 people cook the most. Her father liked to fry steak the most. He would always pull her mother along and hold her hand from behind, asking her to put the steak in the frying pan. As for the rest, her father would not touch it. Her father was an extremely clean freak. Yes, very clean freak. Other than her mother, he would probably think that everyone in the world was dirty. Of course, she was still very likable by her father. After all, her father would not speak ill of her. He would even give her red wine to drink and take her to many mountains to play. It was not like how he treated her big brother. Her father always liked to let her big brother go to the demon world. Her big brother also always said that her father was very shameless. Perhaps there were some things in this world that countered each other, but they merged into a family. A real family. Aju knew that although she said so, she would not tolerate anyone in the family being hurt at all. No, I'm talking about cooking. Baizhuan looked very good when he was cooking. His side profile was very gentle, his movements were as smooth as flowing water, and his eyes were deep. There was no smell of oil on his body. Instead, it was full of the fragrance of food. This made Aju like to nest in his arms after dinner. In fact, it was not Aju who took the initiative to nest. Instead, every time it was this time, Baizhuan would hold her in his arms. The 2 of them would sit on the sofa together. Sometimes, they would watch TV. When watching TV, Baizhuan would always not forget to prepare some snacks for Aju. Aju loved to eat melon seeds. Baizhuan would peel them and feed them to her. Or, he would take a book similar to Time Like Water and read it with Aju. In short, this kind of interaction was sweet, but it was too normal. Especially today, when Aju decided to pounce on Baizhuan and consummate the wedding night. It was said that to pounce on someone, one had to drink some wine. Therefore, before Aju went upstairs, she had already bought a bottle and put it in her bag. Although monks were not allowed to drink wine, she was about to break her sexual abstinence. It should not be a problem to break her sexual abstinence tonight. Moreover, her brother and the others had also said that the immortals in heaven all drank wine. After Aju made up her mind, she silently chanted, "Woolly Buddha." Then, she raised her little face and looked at Baizhuan with her round tiger eyes. "Little brother, shall we drink some wine?" "Drink?" Baizhuan raised his eyebrows. "There's no wine at home." Aju pressed down on her a hoag and said angrily, "I bought it. Anyway, you like it. I also want to drink it today. It's red wine. My mother said that drinking red wine is quite beautiful and nourishing. No wonder little brother is so handsome. In the past, you always secretly drank it yourself." Baizhuan held back his laughter and curled her long hair with his fingers. "Red wine needs a bottle opener. Did you buy it?" "No." Aju was stunned. Baizhuan stood up and walked into the kitchen. When he came out again, he was already holding a bottle opener in his hand. "Where's the red wine?" "Here." Aju raised the wine bottle and handed it to Baizhuan. Her big eyes were very beautiful. She was still wearing the tiger pajamas that Baizhuan had just bought for her today. Her tail was wagging. However, at this time, she was no longer a child. Her body was clearly developed, and her fair collarbone was exposed. Looking at Baizhuan like that, it made Baizhuan have the urge to hug her. That kind of fierce and completely possessive hug. She dressed as a man, dominated the game, and her flirting skills were top-notch. When people found out that he was a girl, they were all excited. Fu Jiu, Almighty Qin, do you have a girlfriend? Qin Mo put down his business book. No. Fu Jiu teased in a low voice, then from now on, you have one. It's me. The corners of Qin Mo's mouth curled up slightly, and he pulled open her school uniform. Fu Jiu was stunned. Wait. What are you going to do? Qin Mo leaned over domineeringly. Exercising my right as a boyfriend to sleep with you. Chapter 1300. Baizhuan's gaze paused for a moment. He forced himself to suppress all his thoughts. Then, he took the red wine over, but he could not stop that thought. Aju was very excited. She was thinking about how to pounce on the little brother later so that it would seem natural. But before she could think of an answer, Baizhuan said, Aju, didn't you want to check the injuries on my body? Yes. Speaking of this serious matter, Aju immediately threw the thought of pouncing on him aside. She did not even drink the wine. With a fierce face, she said, I want to check. Baizhuan smiled. Okay. As he said that, he put down the red wine and lifted his shirt with his slender white fingers. The man's honey-colored and strong abs were displayed in front of Aju just like that. Every inch of his body was beautiful and sexy. That kind of Shurgingdu only wanted people to be hugged in his arms and love him fiercely. Aju did not know why, but when she saw such a little brother, her face actually felt a little hot, and her heartbeat also became irregular. However, Baizhuan pulled her hand over and let her palm press against his abdominal muscles. When he turned to the side, his breath hit behind her ear. Check carefully and see where are my injuries? Baizhuan asked. When her fingertips touched the burning skin, Aju's body unconsciously trembled. Her body was getting hotter and hotter, and her tailbone had an indescribable numbness. Even her breathing seemed to have become out of her control. Little brother, just as she opened her mouth, he lowered his head and kissed her deeply, blocking all the words she wanted to say. The tip of her tongue emitted a familiar mint fragrance. It was clean, charming, and impossible to escape. Aju felt as if her brain had been sucked out, and she was limp from head to toe. Her hands were still buried in the little brother's clothes, and the temperature of her fingertips could not dissipate no matter how hard she tried. Baizhuan leaned over and pressed her entire body into the sofa. His thin lips kissed the back of her ear again and again, and his fingertips pushed away her tiger pajamas. Aju grabbed onto the only trace of thought. She was clearly the one who wanted to pounce on the little brother, so how did it become the little brother pouncing on her? So this is the reason why you want to drink. Baizhuan laughed and said in a low and deep voice, Aju, you're not obedient. Aju's tiger eyes shook. Only then did she realize that she had said everything that she wanted to say. But so what? It was the same whether she pounced on the little brother or the little brother pounced on her. Today was their wedding night. She was going to break her sexual abstinence. However, the man in front of her paused and looked at the phone on the coffee table. A thin layer of sweat appeared on his forehead as he gently placed a kiss on her forehead. Good girl, I still have things to do. You go to sleep first. Aju paused when she heard this. But, this kind of thing had to be done with mutual affection. Moreover, the call came at a bad time. In fact, Aju also knew that the little brother did not want her. Because that phone call was not an important one. Aju entered the room first. She lay on the bed and waited until she was about to fall asleep. Only then did he realize that someone had entered. It seemed that the person had just taken a bath, and his entire body was emitting a faint bath fragrance. Aju naturally reached out her hand and hugged Bai Juan's waist. Her small face rubbed against him. Bai Juan lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms. His deep eyes darkened. The next day, the roommates called Aju to the side on time. "How is it? Is it because after drinking, you are so affectionate and hot-blooded? Go. Don't ask this first. Ask Instructor Bai if his figure is good." Aju thought for a moment and nodded. "Very good. She even touched it before." It was indeed very good. She did not know why, but it seemed that even now, the warmth still remained in her palm. Her body had become so strange. When the roommates heard Aju's words, their eyes lit up. "What about endurance? Is it also very good?" "No." Aju pursed her lips and gave them 2 words listlessly. When the roommates heard this, their expressions changed. Their lips trembled slightly. "You mean, Instructor Bai, he can't do that? What can't he do?" Aju held her small face with both hands. "No, it's the 2 of us who didn't sleep." The roommates exclaimed and patted their chests as if they were relieved. "That's fine. You scared me to death. I thought the Prince Charming in my heart was a fake. But it's very strange. Aren't you married? You didn't even use wine." The roommates looked at each other and frowned fiercely. Instructor Bai was not moved by a beauty like Aju. It didn't look like it. Aju waved her hand as if she didn't care about the failure. "It doesn't matter. I can try again today. The method is right." The roommates were very supportive of Aju. "It's just that you have to hurry up. The military training officially ends in 3 days. At that time, Instructor Bai will return to the army, right?" When they said this, they were also stunned. "In other words, Aju, you will be in a long-distance relationship with Instructor Bai in the future?" "We are not in a relationship. We are married." Aju still valued her status very much. "I even bought a ring for little brother." The roommates looked at her with a rather heroic expression. "No matter what, Aju, you really should take advantage of Instructor Bai before he returns to the army. Otherwise, it will be dangerous in the future." "Dangerous?" A trace of doubt flashed across Aju's round tiger eyes. The roommates actually did not want to teach her bad things, but Aju was younger than them. They just wanted to remind her of some principles. In the past, there were also university students who fell in love with instructors. They were all sweet when they were in school. After they separated, their feelings faded. This is also the reason why the school does not allow students to fall in love with instructors. The army also does not allow instructors to fall in love with students. Aju said seriously, "That's why little brother brought me to get the marriage certificate. He is responsible for his identity and me." Bai Juan had just walked here when he heard this sentence. His girl was defending him. Before the smile on his face could be raised, the phone in the pocket of his military uniform rang. The ringtone was different from the usual ringtone. It was the ringtone that would only ring every time they were about to carry out a special mission. Bai Juan's footsteps that were about to take a step forward suddenly stopped. He instinctively turned his head and looked behind him. Not only him, but the entire problem army's cell phones also rang. Chapter 13:01. Okay. A voice came from the other end of the phone. "Captain, we will arrive at the capital airport in half an hour. The police will cooperate with you to clear the direct route from the school to the airport. The east-west traffic lights will be suspended. Now, all the mechanisms have entered a state. Captain, there is a road on your left that can lead to the main road. There is a military vehicle parked there. When Baizhuan was on the phone, his eyes were always on the adorable child who was walking towards him not far away. He thought that he had to firmly remember her current appearance in such a small amount of time. His girl had already become his little wife. His wife, as long as he thought of these 4 words, Baizhuan's heart would soften. Then, it was because of this gentleness that he became unyielding in battle. He remembered it all the time. What he wanted to protect. Captain. The person on the other side was wearing headphones. He turned his head and thought that the signal was not good. Their captain did not receive the message. Baizhuan retracted his gaze. His deep and dark eyes suddenly became as reserved as ink. Got it. I'll go over right away. His entire body seemed to have melted into the wind. Just like how he had done countless missions in the past, there was a seemingly harmless poisonous snake hidden in the sand, but in fact, it would bite people to death once it was out. Even if it was saving people, they had to wear a black mask. This was how they were. They would never be remembered by others. But from the beginning to the end, they were willing. Ajou wanted to go over, but she saw Baizhuan open his mouth. Although she could not hear any sound. But Ajou also knew what he was saying. He said, "Wait for me to come back." At that moment, she seemed to have sensed something and stood there in a daze. Her roommates walked over and asked her, "What's wrong?" "Little brother is leaving." Ajou lowered her head and said in a low voice. Her roommates were still laughing. How can it be so fast? There are still 3 days of military training. The instructors won't just. Before they could finish their words, they saw a few instructors take off their camouflage jackets and head towards a certain place at the same time. At this time, the school leader also came over and stopped the students. "Students, listen to me. The new instructor has arrived at the front door of the school." The students were puzzled. Why do we need a new instructor? Where are Instructor Bai and the others? Instructor Bai and the others have something to do in the army. Alright, let's gather now. In fact, the school leaders didn't know what was going on. They just wanted to cooperate with the higher-ups. A large number of new instructors had arrived, and they wanted to do just that. Of course, no one would dare to step forward now that the school leaders were there. Moreover, the instructor and the others seemed to be walking very quickly. In the blink of an eye, they were already out of sight. Her roommates did not expect that things would develop to this point. They turned to look at the smallest one in their dormitory and did not know how to comfort her. It was all their fault for being such a jinx. Ajou. The boss pulled her over and was about to say something. Ajou said, "When I see Grandpa Bai on the 1st of October, I'll ask which army little brother is in. When the time comes, I'll go look for him." It was now the 1st of October, which was only slightly more than half a month. That's fine. His roommates breathed a sigh of relief. But he still found it strange. Under normal circumstances, the instructor would not leave until he had finished teaching the students. This time it was too strange. Not only did Instructor Bai leave, but even his subordinates also left with him. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled. Baizhuan and the others had already gotten into the car. As soon as they got into the car, they began to change their equipment. Their speed was so fast that it made people click their tongues. "Tell me the mission objective again." Baizhuan's voice was very calm. He gave the order and looked sideways, checking his gun. The driver said as he drove, "Someone entered our camp when our army was practicing, right at the border of our army. The people from the west used to be international special forces and were hired by a drug lord. Now, they are working as gangsters and want to transport powder through the border. They have few people, are good at hiding, and know very well how to fight in the jungle, especially in the tropical rainforest. We only managed to pry open this line because we caught a person. However, the other party is too cunning and deliberately chose a minefield. If we go further, there will be residents, so we can't send a large force, and we can't deal with them with our small force. These people have smart minds and international military training experience. They are very clear about our routine. It can be said that the combat mode we use here may be outdated in their eyes, so they want to invite the sharp blades to take action. As he spoke, the driver swung the tail of the car and drove into the main road. On this day, many people who took the airport route encountered a red light and waited for instructions. It was as if they were deliberately passing for someone. This was not uncommon in the imperial capital. But that would happen on Chang'an Street. And the strange thing was that this time, it was not a few cars that passed by. Instead, there was only a black military Hummer. They could not see what was going on inside. The car did not have a license plate, so it was very mysterious. But even so, it was still allowed to pass through and even drive into the airport. They did not pass the security check. These people all walked through special passages and were personally led by the higher-ups. A military plane was still hovering in the sky, stirring up a gust of wind. Then, a rope was thrown down. "Captain!" Someone stood at the entrance of the cabin and shouted down. Bai Juan gestured, and the problem soldiers immediately grabbed the rope and climbed up one by one. Each of them was very fast and very professional. They did not look like the lazy and arrogant people they were in school at all. Bai Juan was the last to go up. The plane did not even land before it flew away. The team of about 10 people began to increase their equipment for the second time on the plane. Bai Juan turned around and pointed at a small notebook. "This is the target we are going to deal with today. Remember their appearance and characteristics, as well as their gun techniques." "Yes." After the research, there was still half an hour of rest. Everyone sat in the cabin in silence. Li Hailu looked at Bai Juan's side profile and lowered his voice. "Did you say goodbye to Aju properly?" No, Bai Juan did not want to say these two words. He paused for a moment. "I asked her to wait for me to go back. It's not easy to be a military wife." Li Hailu nudged him with his shoulder. "Fortunately, you met Aju. She was like this when you were young. If you asked her to wait, she would wait. She trusted you more than anyone else." "Yes." Bai Juan lowered his eyes and smiled. So, how lucky was it to have such a wife? Chapter 1302. There are still 20 minutes to reach our goal. The pilot adjusted the sound wave. "Captain, I can't fly the plane over. I'll be discovered." Bai Juan restrained his gentleness. His handsome side profile flickered under the light. "Let's jump down." "Okay." The pilot flew sideways. All the soldiers were carrying parachute bags and guns. Military green equipment would be more convenient for hiding. "Are you ready?" Bai Juan stood at the hatch and looked back. His black hair was messy, his eyes were deep, and his voice was buzzing in the wind. "I'm ready." The answer was very loud. Bai Juan put on his mask, and his eyes were as cold as a wolf's. "Those who offend China, even if they are far away, they will be killed." The last sentence was said in a very deep voice. That voice seemed to come from their chests. It was like the scorching sun in the desert. In their eyes, there seemed to be something that would never be extinguished. Even if they were fully armed and only revealed a pair of eyes, people could not help but feel that it was starlight that filled the sky. At the same time, it was in an apartment outside the school. Aju pushed open the door. On this day, there was no smell of food in the kitchen, and the bedroom was also cold. She was stunned at first, then she raised her head and looked at Alaska in the room. The big dog was also a little listless. It lay there and did not even raise its paws. Aju immediately ran over and gave it dog food. Her eyes were very beautiful. Little brother left too suddenly, right? Woof! Alaska barked at her as if it had remembered something. It bit the hem of her pants and told her to go to the bedroom. Aju's round tiger eyes turned. What's there? Woof! Alaska ran over by itself and touched the box beside the bed with its big head. Aju was happy. Did little brother leave it for me? Woof! As a military dog, it was making a mountain out of a molehill for it to do this kind of thing. However, since it was its master's order, of course, it had to do its best. Thinking of this, Alaska raised its dog head. The way it raised its head and puffed out its chest made Aju want to rub it. Alaska was so scared that it shrank back and barked again, woof, woof, woof. You want me to watch it quickly? Aju raised her eyebrows. I'm talking about how strong you are. Alaska proudly walked around in a circle. Aju decided to play with little Ala later. She lowered her head and opened the box. There was a black card, a real estate book, and a piece of paper lying quietly inside. There was a line of words written on the paper in beautiful handwriting. If I had known that I had you for the rest of my life, I would have wanted to start the rest of my life earlier. My Aju, are you happy to marry me? Aju looked at the piece of paper with bright eyes. She turned around and hugged the dog's head. With a delicate little face, she said seriously, what should we do? I really miss it now. I miss her so much. I miss her so much. I'll pounce on you. Alaska, the way you express your gratitude is really unusual. Pounce. Shouldn't girls be crying at this time? Sure enough, he shouldn't have thought of her in a normal way. This Hercules. Aju looked at the piece of paper again and suddenly raised her head. I've decided. I'll join the army too. The expression on Alaska's face changed. Wait a minute, don't mess around. When Master finds out, he will think that I didn't look after you well. Why do you think Master left me behind? It's decided then. Aju reached out and patted Alaska's head. The Alaska, dazed by her strength, began to turn in circles. Aju did not hesitate at all. She felt that she could not tell her father about joining the army. Because every time her father saw humans, it was as if he was looking at ants. Probably all the demon kings were like this. At least it was much better than her big brother who wanted to eat humans whenever he saw them. Moreover, her father seemed to have brought her mother to the demon world. In her father's words, it was best not to disturb him and her mother if there was nothing. Aju poked her face. Then she would just tell her brother and the others directly. Second brother definitely had a way. Aju took out her phone and called Enchanting. The call was quickly picked up. Her second brother's smile was as pleasant as ever. Little sister, what's wrong? Her big brother seemed to be there as well. He said coldly and evilly, were you bullied by Baijuan? Just divorce him. No. Aju shook her head. It wasn't easy for me to tie little brother down. I don't want a divorce. Moreover, little brother didn't bully me. He has always been very good to me. Enchanting let out a long sigh. Don't listen to big brother. He's jealous. I know. Aju said in a tiger voice, I will always love big brother. Even if I get married, I will still love big brother more than Buddha. Bailey Shangxia smiled. Yes, very good. Then big brother, can you do me a favor? Ajou continued, I want to join the army. Don't you know people in the army? I saw someone go to the villa to look for you last time. Bailey Shangxia frowned. Join the army? No, why not? Ajou's tiger eyes widened. I'm very good at fighting. Bailey Shangxia lazily leaned back. Your purpose for joining the army is not good. It must be for that guy Bai Juan. Yes, but not entirely. Ajou's eyes darkened. I know divination. When I reach the border, I will definitely be able to save more people. I originally wanted to open a temple, but after thinking about it, I am already married to little brother. In the future, I will break the precept of lust, but I can't let Buddha down. Buddha said that true kindness is not to not see blood, but to be able to raise a knife and protect the important people. Even if your hands are covered in blood, you have to do it without hesitation. Little brother joined the army for me. I also want to join the army to protect our family. Bailey Shangxia listened to the words on the other side, and his fingers slowly stopped. Then, he turned around and met Helian Qingqin's gaze. Helian Qingqin reached out and took the phone out of his palm. She smiled faintly. Okay, big brother, and I will help you arrange it. Thank you, big brother, second brother. Ajou's tiger eyes burned. After hanging up the phone, Bailey Shangxia stood up. Are you really going to let little sister join the army? Big brother. Helian Qingqin sat there and poured a cup of tea. It was like a clear painting that slowly unfolded. The Buddhist scriptures said that back then, the phoenix egg landed on Mount Buzhou. Sakya attracted the Buddhist light and waited for her to be born. Phoenix walked out of the blazing flames, so she must be different from the other Buddhas. Mother once held the phoenix bone knife in her hand and stepped on white bones and blood. She made a great vow that she would not become a Buddha until the sea of blood was empty. Little sister has the Buddhist fate of mother. She is different from us. Since she is the descendant of Phoenix, she naturally has the same comprehension. This is our little sister, isn't it? Chapter 1303. Hearing this, Bailey Shangxia pursed his lips. But from the looks of it, he seemed to have been convinced. He retracted his demonic aura and lay back on the sofa, like a lion that had retracted its claws. Helian Qingqin's lips curled up. And little sister still has us, she will be fine. I'll go catch a few ghosts and follow her. Bailey Shangxia moved immediately. Helian Qingqin thought for a moment and said, that's fine too. Then go to the underworld. When Bailey Shangxia mentioned the underworld, layers of evil aura appeared in his long and narrow eyes. At this time, the judge was the only one working overtime in the King of Hell's palace. He felt very sad. When Bailey Shangxia and Helian Qingqin appeared, he was so scared that he trembled. Why are the two young masters here? We're here to see you, Judge. Bailey Shangxia put his arm on the judge's shoulder. At this time, he didn't look like he was in the human world at all. Instead, he had turned into a demon with black hair that reached the ground. Even his eyes had turned into an evil red. That kind of pressure was really not something that anyone could bear. Especially the judge who had been troubled by their family. Young Master Shangxia, don't joke around. You're here to see our highness, right? He's not here and has gone to the human world. You know that he's grown up now. The King of Hell can't control him anymore. He's running between the two worlds. I know about this. He even got 2 ox head and horse face for the person he likes. Bailey Shangxia flipped through the book of life and death on the table. The judge wanted to stop him, but he didn't dare to make a sound. He could only bow his head silently. However, was the news of their family's prince's disgraceful actions so widespread? Even the people in the demon world knew about it. It's not just the demon world. He seemed to have seen through the judge's thoughts. Last time, a few demons were discussing in the city center. I heard them. Those demons were courting death. Of all the people they could target, they actually targeted the person he was interested in. The judge paused for a moment. After thinking for a while, he decided to ask, "Young Master Shangxie, don't you think that it's strange for my highness to give someone ox head and horse face? Those are all ghost messengers. What's so strange about that?" Bailey Shangxie retorted, "What else is the underworld specialty other than the emissaries of hell?" The judge. He actually had nothing to say to that. But was it really a good idea to give it to a ghost servant that he loved? The most important thing was that the other party was a human. When these young masters gave gifts, did they ever consider the feelings of other people as humans? Hellion Qingchen kept laughing at the side. He didn't want to tell the judge that other than looking for the Book of Life and Death, his big brother was also here to catch a few ghosts to play with his little sister. Otherwise, the infernal judge would definitely go crazy. Why aren't there any people with the surname by here? Bailey Shangxie flipped through a few pages and casually threw the Book of Life and Death to the side. The judge quickly caught it. Young Master Shangxie is talking about the Tang family. Your Highness calls him Uncle Tang. Bailey Shangxie was very absent-minded. The judge was shocked when he heard that. Then, he slowly said, "I don't know if young Master Shangxie has heard of such a saying. If a person is alive, he is not afraid of gods or demons. He has a clear conscience and his faith is as strong as a rock. He will not be affected by the Book of Life and Death." Bailey Shangxie listened quietly. A light flashed in his eyes. The person from the Tang family who dared to shoot at ghosts is one of the exceptions. After the judge finished speaking, he continued, "The young master of the Bai family is also full of righteousness. Not to mention ghosts, even Oxhead and Horseface don't dare to approach him." Hearing this, Hellion Qingchen raised her eyebrows. In fact, they came down this time to increase Bai Zhuan's lifespan. They didn't expect his life to be so tough. People who were not in the Book of Life and Death were variables other than gods and demons. In fact, Hellion Qingchen herself was also a variable. After all, he was not like Bailey Shangxie, nor was he like a Jew. In his body, there was both Hellion Vivian's Buddhist aura and Beligaju's demonic vein and immortal root. Originally, he should not have existed in the world, but after reversing the reincarnation time and space, he was born. Since that's the case, then it doesn't matter if a Jew joins the army. With Bai Zhuan's righteousness, the cultivation of Buddha's fate depends on righteousness in the end. Hellion Qingchen raised her eyes and smiled at Bailey Shangxie. Bailey Shangxie raised his eyebrows. "Then we'll just catch a ghost." "Ghost?" The judge's expression changed drastically. "You can't do that. Young masters, the underworld is different from the ancient times. We also have to clock into work and take inventory of the warehouse. If there are fewer ghosts, how am I going to explain it to His Highness?" Bailey Shangxie slowly curled his lips. "That's your business. Be good and work hard. We'll be leaving first." "Wait a minute. You little bastards. Come back." Aju did not know that her two brothers had caught a few ghosts for her in the underworld. The next day, she finished writing the application for a leave of absence. Wearing the military uniform of a recruit, she held the Alaskan in her hand and embarked on her military journey. Every year, the recruits would receive a demonic training on the first day. It was fine to be a female soldier, but Aju did not apply for an art soldier or a military doctor. Instead, she wanted to be a special forces soldier with all aspects. "Do you know how to shoot?" The person who asked her was a female soldier in her 30s. She had neat short black hair, a military cap on her head, and straight military boots. There was even a kind of fierce beauty. Although her voice was very faint, there was no trace of contempt in her eyes. Instead, it was an ordinary inquiry. Aju nodded heavily. I know how to shoot. When the captain heard this, he casually threw her a gun. Try shooting twice. Aju took it and aimed her round tiger eyes at the muzzle of the gun. Bang! 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 3 shots were fired in succession. Every shot hit the bullseye. The surrounding recruits all had their mouths wide open. Was she really like them, reporting to the army on her first day? The female soldier looked at Aju and smiled. She ordered the people behind her, tell them that there's no need to choose from the veterans for me. I already have a candidate. As she spoke, she raised her hand and pointed at Aju. I want to take this little girl away. When the minister behind the female soldier heard this, he suddenly paused. Are you really sure? Of course. The female soldier curled her lips into a faint smile. This is the kind of person we need. After saying that, she looked at Aju and asked with some interest, Little girl, you don't seem to be surprised that I chose you at all. With a small face, she said in a very serious tone, Before I came to be a soldier, I gave myself a divination. The divination said that I would meet a noble person, so this is normal. The female soldier looked at her cute little appearance and suddenly had the urge to hug her in her arms and rub her. She did the same and carried Aju over. What a noble person. Then come back to the Tang sect with me, little cute pet. Tang sect? Where her mother used to be. Aju's tiger eyes lit up and she immediately said, Okay. Chapter 1304. The minister's face was full of black lines as he watched from behind. He had heard before that the Tang sect never played by the rules when choosing people. As expected, the recruits were all taken away by them. This child was still underage, right? She would definitely regret choosing to go to the Tang sect in the future. After all, that place was not a place for girls to stay. Those who could go all had a man in their hearts. Moreover, all of them were not afraid of death. However, he did not understand. The current Aju was very excited. Her round tiger eyes lit up. She put her hand between her lips and whistled loudly. A majestic Alaskan ran over from the other side and squatted beside her. Unlike the wild snow of the Alaskan, the white cat's steps were very cold. First, it jumped on the back of the Alaskan. Then, with a kick, it jumped on Aju's head. Its tail was wagging there. This beautiful big sister, can I bring Xiao Bai and Allah with me? The head of the army was stunned. When did these cats and dogs come in? Why didn't he know at all? Sure. The female soldier smiled confidently. In the future, these would be the cute pets of the Tang sect. Aju smiled again. She thought to herself that if she had brought little Allah with her on the day they met, her little brother would definitely be happy to see her. The female soldier drove a desert military vehicle. The military vehicle had obviously been modified. The wheels were very thick, and when it rolled over the ground, it had a different vibration. Now that she had finished choosing people, she supported herself with one hand and jumped in. She did not sit in the driver's seat, but in the passenger's seat. She casually threw the keys to Aju. Aju immediately understood and jumped in with her arms propped up. She held the steering wheel with a very serious expression. The Alaskan and the white cat sat in the back. The scene was very cool. The military woman seemed to be very satisfied with the bunch of cute pets she brought. She put on her sunglasses and ordered, "Let's go." At the beginning, it was indeed very cool. But when Aju started the car, the military woman tilted her head and almost tripped. Damn! Don't drive like that. Throttle. Slow down. Turn left. Child, that's not the left. Thus, a new journey began with a bang. 3 months later. At the southern border of Tibet, in the deepest part of the dense forest. It was said that it was the line of defense that terrified the enemy the most. Over there was a group of soldiers who were different from ordinary people. They belonged to the external force of the army and were the most special unit. They were not arranged according to their serial numbers, nor did they belong to any branch of the armed forces. The criminals overseas called them the Tang sect. The Huaxia people were most famous for Chinatown in various countries. This was the source of the Tang sect's meaning. In other words, this was the door to Huaxia, and they were the most trustworthy gatekeepers. This was because a belief was deeply implanted in their bones. If one day I have someone I love, I'll tell her. Sorry, I can only protect you with my left hand. Because my right hand will be free, ready to go into battle at any time. This was the Tang sect. A unique existence. In the lush forest, a pair of military shoes stepped on the fallen leaves. Looking at the young girl who was playing with the wild wolf's tail, he could not help but raise his hand and rub his forehead. Aju, come here quickly. There's a mission. When Aju heard this, she raised her eyes. Her tiger eyes were very beautiful. Another mission. Yes, so let those wolves go. The soldier woman walked over. This time, it's a mission outside. Aju let go of her hand and stood up. She seemed to have grown a little taller. Her bright eyes and white teeth were clear. This is my first time going out. A special forces team will complete the mission with you. The female soldier patted her head. Pack up and go out. Aju nodded and asked, how do I get there? By car. The female soldier was speechless. No. The female soldier decisively denied. Someone will send you there. When they were carrying out the mission, they encountered something strange and need you to calculate. When Aju heard this, she felt a little regretful. Actually, other than divination, I'm also very good at fighting. You don't need to do this kind of thing. The female soldier smiled. They're also very strong. Aju withered for a moment and made another request. Then I want to bring 10 buns to eat on the road. The female soldier was speechless. Could this request be higher? However, she would still try her best to satisfy the request of the cute pet of the Tang sect. Aju wanted 10 buns, and the shadows gave her 20. There were also people who told her how to carry out the mission. Don't talk to people. Be cold and aloof. This is the style of our Tang sect. Don't dance with people either. Put on sunglasses. If anyone dares to take advantage of you, just cut their throat. Last time, I pretended to be a dancer. Don't mention the feeling. Damn it, being touched on the waist almost made me curse in public. Hearing this last sentence, Aju raised her head. But senior brother, you're a man. Why did you pretend to be a dancer? That person froze and his face quickly turned red. It's necessary for the mission. No, this is definitely his hobby. Another beautiful sister walked over. Moreover, Aju, don't you think that his face is most suitable to be a dancer? Aju looked at her senior brother's face and nodded seriously. Indeed. You guys. That person gritted his teeth. Don't teach Aju bad things. Aju blinked and saw that everyone had stuffed a lot of things into her backpack. Basically, they were all food. When you're out on missions, you often don't have anything to eat. Wear them. I also have a small smoke bomb here. Adieu, I've seen the place you're going in advance. You still need to go around a forest to reach your destination. There are many snakes in the forest. Be careful. Adieu nodded as she listened. She looked very obedient. At this time, someone paused. Animals and whatnot, it should be fine, right? That's true. The others nodded. They firmly believed that Adieu was the king of the beasts. Adieu carried her heavy backpack and said very neatly, then I'll be leaving. I'll bring you instant noodles when I come back. I want the braised ones. Spicy ones. Seafood ones. Look at how useless you are. I want everything. Didn't you come out with a kimchi flavor recently? Give me a box too. Adieu nodded and turned around. A large military bag was carried on her back. It did not look like something that could be carried by someone of her physique at all. She was followed by an Alaskan dog. Just like that, they entered the endless forest bit by bit. At that time, she did not know that the person waiting at the other end of the mission was someone who made her happy. Chapter 1305. To enter the mission area, one had to pass through a wild jungle. In China, there were many undeveloped tropical jungles. These jungles were basically at the border. But even in such a place, there would be troops stationed. Because here, there would always be some enemies eyeing them covetously. When China was first established, weapons were backward. There were many things that could not be extended, and they could not use force. Because it would violate the peace treaty at that time. There was clearly an enemy invading, but after the alarm sounded, the enemy plane still wandered around China without fear. It was because of this treaty that the other party was like this. They clung to China and did not dare to shoot. At that time, in order to repel the exploration plane sent by the enemy and protect national secrets, an officer flew a plane and crashed into it. Not shooting was not a violation of the treaty. But this officer was only 26 years old. Now, the treaty had changed, but there were still many problems. Someone had entered the country and was about to escape with the secrets they had found. If this person was still in the country, once he left the country, no one had the right to kill him. Crossing the border to kill would be condemned internationally. But at this moment, the jungle leading to the enemy was filled with thick fog. Such thick fog was very abnormal. In China, the surface and feng shui were the most important. There were many things that could not be explained by science. In addition, there were many ancient tombs in China. No one could imagine the underground world. This time, no one knew if someone had encountered something. It caused a thick fog to fill the air. This was the reason why the special forces invited the people from the Tang sect over. Because there were some things that only they could do. Adieu carried her large military school bag and stood at the entrance of the jungle. This is the jungle that senior brother was talking about. After passing through it, we will reach our destination. Little Allah, let's go. Adieu strolled in. Her walking speed was not slow. On the contrary, it was very fast. If one looked carefully, they would find that there was something on her shoes. Although Adieu could not drive, she was very good at feng shui fortune-telling. It might be easy for others to get lost in this kind of tropical rainforest. But for Adieu, it was not a problem at all. The Tang sect would cultivate everyone's special abilities. The current Adieu was already fully equipped. She held a compass in her hand and was indeed wearing a modern military uniform. Such a contrast made people feel even cooler. In the human world, many people did not know. In ancient times, some exorcists had already become special forces soldiers. And Adieu was the strongest one besides her mother. The compass shows that it's in the east. Aju stopped and glanced at her palm. Oh, the aura is a little strong. Let's continue. However, this time, Alaska didn't move. Instead, it faced a certain place on the tree and raised all its fur. Its claws were also exposed. It kept scratching the ground, as if it was ready to pounce on the tree and fight. It was blocking in front of Aju, even if the huge monster in front of it was too dangerous. As a loyal dog, it was not afraid. It didn't back down at all. Instead, it reacted in the most loyal way possible. Aju looked in the direction where Alaska was baring its teeth. There was a python wrapped around the tree. The python was very large, and its entire body was wrapped around the tree trunk. Its head was triangular, and it kept spitting out its scarlet tongue. Its eyes were extremely dangerous, and it was clearly staring at Aju. But if there was only one python, it would be fine. However, there was another 145 degrees to Aju's left. In other words, there were two pythons eyeing Aju covetously. No wonder Alaska's snow was so strong. Such a situation was really worrying. Hiss! One of the giant pythons had already begun to move. With its length and thickness, even if it did not use its poisonous fangs, it could use its body to directly wrap Aju to death. However, the giant python's attack speed was very fast. Almost at the moment it was discovered, it pounced toward Aju. The other giant python also took the opportunity to leap. This human dared to break into their territory. She was simply courting death. She was so small that it was not enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. But the moment they bit down, their jaws were suddenly pinched by something. That kind of strength was so great that they could not imagine it. There was a bang. The first giant python was thrown out by Aju with one hand. As for the second giant python, Aju grabbed its neck with one hand and pulled hard, directly stepping on its head under her feet. There was a rumbling sound. It was the sound of trees being swept down. The giant python that was stepped on by Aju crazily swung its tail, wanting to counterattack. Aju raised her fist and punched fiercely. That fist was clearly very small, but when it landed, it stunned the giant python. Then, she opened her palm, and countless Buddha beads flashed with a faint light as they fell, heavily hitting the giant python's 7 inches. After the other giant python saw the Buddha light, it wanted to turn around and escape. This girl was not an ordinary human at all. She was, before the giant python could confirm Aju's identity. Its body was heavily pressed back to its original place by the Buddha word that fell from the sky. They could not break free. They were just demons that had yet to take shape. They could not fight against the Buddha light at all. Aju looked at the giant python and squatted down. Her tiger eyes were big and beautiful. The animals here are not friendly, right, little Alla? She turned around and asked the little brother's favorite pet. Little Alla scratched its head. Do you think that all snakes, wolves, and cheetahs are like those animals in southern Tibet? The reason why they are friendly to you is not because they are really friendly, but because they have been destroyed by you so much that they can't be unfriendly. Sigh, I can't play with you anymore. After saying that, Aju stood up and said to the giant python in a dignified manner, I still have a mission to do. Look at you. It won't be long before you become a demon. You should have killed a lot of people, and there might be some soldiers among them. But Buddha is merciful. Hearing the words Buddha is merciful, the giant python raised its head and hid its hostility, trying to make itself look harmless and pitiful. However, what it did not expect was that the girl's next words were, I'll beat you to death now and let you pay back what you owe me. I'll send you to hell. Wait a minute. It shouldn't be like this. This was clearly not the line behind Buddha is merciful. The giant python stretched out its neck and let out a last low roar. Ajo looked at the soft snake head and reached out to touch it. "Don't thank me. I understand." If the giant python was still alive, it would definitely be angered to death by these words. After solving the problem, Ajo carried the military bag on her back and looked at the empty space not far away with her naive tiger eyes. Her destination should be right in front of her. Chapter 1306. Aju's eyes were wide open as she lifted her school bag. As she walked, she said to Alaska, "I don't know what exactly is here that can touch such a huge miasma. I have to hurry over. Otherwise, Woolie's teammates will be in danger." The nagging voice gradually faded away with the unfathomable depth of the forest. At the same time, on the west side of the forest, everyone in the problem army was holding guns in their hands. They were wearing military green battle suits that were the same color as the forest. Their faces were still covered with masks, but this time, their expressions were somewhat solemn. Even the large windshield couldn't hide the worry and irritation in their eyes. "Captain, this is already our 5th lap. Every time we walk a lap, we will return to the original spot. Should we wait a little?" When Li Hailu was on a mission, he never called Bai Juan by his name. Instead, he called him Captain. The problem army was the same. They turned their heads and looked at Bai Juan. In the past 2 years, they had received many missions, but none of them were like this one. Not only did all the directional positioning instruments fail, even the police dogs that came over were trembling. The strangest thing was the fog. Logically speaking, there should be wind wherever there was fog. However, this place was so quiet that it made people feel strange. What exactly did those people take from here? Why was this mission so abnormal? Everyone had a question mark in their hearts. There were not many people in the problem army. This group, including Bai Juan, only had a total of 7 people. Bai Juan turned his head. The deep eyes that were revealed by the mask were very eye-catching. He scanned the surroundings, then squatted down and rubbed the soil on the ground. It was not pure sand, but mixed with many stone fragments. "Is there a mountain on the west side of the forest?" Bai Juan asked the commissioner in charge of intelligence who had followed them out. That person nodded. "Yes, Captain. This mountain is very old. I don't know which mountain it belongs to. There are no records in the information, but it spans the map of China and neighboring countries." "Is there an ancient tomb on the mountain?" Bai Juan asked again. That person thought for a moment. "I think so. I forgot what it was called." "I know." Bai Juan stood up, but his eyes were a little heavy. "It should be the tomb of the Ghost Mother." Ghost Mother? What was that? All the problem soldiers turned their heads and looked at Bai Juan. Why did their captain even know about these things? Bai Juan's voice was indifferent. "There are records in the Buddhist scriptures that the Ghost Mother is also known as Hariti, which is transliterated in Sanskrit as the Empress of the River Pear. In ancient times, a Buddha was born in the royal resident city, so a celebration was held. 500 people attended the celebration. Along the way, they met a pregnant woman who was accompanying them. Unexpectedly, she had a miscarriage midway and all 500 people left her behind. She swore an oath that in her next life, she would reincarnate into princely resident city and devour all the children there. This was where Ghost Mother Ninechild had her miscarriage. It was said that her nascent divinity had become a Buddha. Her followers built a tomb for her in order to pay tribute to her, all so that they could one day see her return. Captain, you even read Buddhist scriptures? They really can't understand the world of a top student. Since this Ghost Mother has become a Buddha, why is this place still like this? Shouldn't all Buddhas be good? Bai Juan looked at the fog that filled the sky. Not necessarily. When you leave later, don't look in front. Look under your feet and feel the thickness under your feet. Follow behind me and walk in a row. Yes. Although the problem soldiers had many questions in their hearts, they knew that their captain must have his reasons for letting them do this. Therefore, no one said anything. They lined up in a row, closed their eyes, and walked forward bit by bit with their legs close to each other. That kind of speed was very slow, and there was an indescribable torture. Especially when you couldn't look in front and lowered your head to grope forward, there was always a sense of insecurity. Fortunately, these people were all special forces soldiers. Even if they encountered such a thing that could not be explained by science, they were not afraid to lose their minds. In fact, whether it was novels or movies, they would all tell us the same thing. When danger came, don't think about how to escape. Because you would never be able to escape. Instead, you had to find a breakthrough. The more stable you were, the more likely you would be to survive to the end. Just like Bai Juan and the others were now, if one of them did not have strong willpower and wanted to retreat, what they would face might be an infinite circuit or something even more terrifying. After walking like this for an unknown period of time, Bai Juan's military boots finally stopped. Then, he bent down again and touched the soil on the ground. It was much more delicate than before. It was obvious that they had changed places. That's enough. Bai Juan stood up straight and ordered, "All of you, open your eyes. First, look at the ground under your feet clearly. Then, walk forward." Yes. Everyone was very cautious. The first moment they opened their eyes, they looked at their feet. There was a person in the middle who was very dangerous because if he was a little further away, it was very likely that he would miss a step and fall to the cliff beside him. Fortunately, the other person did not walk directly. There was a snake coiled under his feet. No one knew whether the snake was alive or dead, but it just lay there softly. "We've finally walked out." The problem soldiers were very excited. "Captain, how did you do it?" Bai Juan glanced at his feet. "The soil is different. Under any situation that affects vision and hearing, only the sense of touch is the most accurate. The magnetic field here is not right, causing us to hallucinate when we walk. We feel that we are walking in a straight line, but in fact, we have already circled around. That's why we return to the original place again and again. Using the geology of the soil to determine the direction, there won't be a big problem." Not only the problem soldiers, even the team member who was in charge of intelligence was dumbfounded. He had a look of wonder on his face. Why did he have research on what kind of soil was like? Weren't they soldiers? When did they become top archaeologists? Li Hailu walked over and patted their shoulders comfortingly. "It's okay, you still have me, a bad student, to accompany you. There's no other way." When the captain was in high school, he was recommended to study abroad. He has won many awards in the country. Since he was young, he has been a pervert. Other than books, he is not interested in anything else. He started studying English at the age of 7. Don't learn from him. Vice Captain. Someone suddenly interrupted Li Hailu's words and pointed behind him. What is that thing?" Chapter 1307. Someone suddenly interrupted Li Hailu's words and pointed behind him. What is that thing?" Perhaps it was because his expression was too panicked, or perhaps it was because the uncomfortable feeling just now was still lingering in people's hearts. Everyone looked in the direction his finger was pointing at. There were indeed things there. One after another, they stood in the thick fog as if they were hiding in the surroundings and looking at them. At first, they did not notice it. Now, it looked a little like a human. No, that was not right. How could there be a human here? But if it was not a human, what could it be? In an instant, the problem soldiers raised the guns in their hands. Their spirits were tense to the extreme, just to deal with the situation that might appear in a while. However, nothing happened. The strange thing was that those people did not seem to move at all, and each of them looked very stiff. It was as if they were stuck there. The problem soldiers looked at each other. They felt that this place was very strange. If it were not for the captain, they might have stayed in place for the rest of their lives. But now, they had come to such a damned place. The snakes on the ground were also very strange. They seemed to be hibernating, but they also seemed to be not. "Captain, what should we do now? The distance is not close, and there is also a fog between us. But how could there be people here?" Li Hailu also gritted his teeth. He really did not want to say the word people, because the fact that people would appear here was too strange. Bai Juan narrowed his eyes. That shouldn't be a person. Not a person. What is it? Li Hailu trembled. To be honest, no matter how mighty and majestic he was not as calm as Bai Juan when it came to things in the unknown. In fact, no one would do what Bai Juan did. Li Hailu did not understand what was going on with him. Could it be that everyone who had been to the mountain was like this? Or was it that all the direct descendants of the Tang family were like this? In their eyes, were there no dirty things? Bai Juan tilted his head and raised his gun to the side. It looks like something that has been set up. It looks a little like a doll. Mannequin. Li Hailu sighed in relief. I thought you would say dead body or ghost or something like that. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. Although I can't see clearly here, one thing is certain. These human-like things don't wear clothes. Whether they are corpses or ghosts, they will wear clothes. If they don't wear white clothes that are fluttering in the wind, they won't appear. Therefore, it's not the kind of thing you think it is. The luster on their bodies just now should be the wood wax that was applied on them previously. Li Hailu. As expected of Master Bai. Even at this point, he could still analyze what the other party was based on, whether they were wearing clothes or not. A few people followed Bai Juan and walked over. There were many snakes in this place. It was a bit like entering a snake cave. Most of the snakes were hanging on the trees. They were all lishless, but their eyes were more vicious than the venomous snakes they had seen before. And the strangest thing was, every snake here seemed to be growing. That was right. It was growth. For example, when someone stepped on it just now, the snake was still 40 centimeters long. Now, it had grown to about 42 centimeters. If it was others, they might not be able to see such a subtle difference, but they were all special forces soldiers, so they were very sensitive to distance and length. How could this be? If anything could grow at such a fast rate, it would be impossible. That was simply unimaginable. Moreover, only this circle of snakes looked like this. The snakes in other places did not look like this. However, the terrifying thing was that many snakes had begun to crawl towards that place. Bai Juan was right. There were puppets standing there. One after another, there were many puppets. They were actually not tall, but there was something below them. On the contrary, each of them was very short. They had exquisite small faces and bodies that had not grown up yet. It was obvious that these puppets were children who had not grown up yet. Judging from their clothes and workmanship, these puppets did not seem to be made now. They should have been made for a certain period of time. They looked a little like the Tang dynasty, but they were not completely the same. Because some of the clothes were even wearing kasaya, they had the style of the Western region. However, the problem soldiers were not in the mood to look at these puppets at all. All their attention was on the snakes. Every single one of them was growing bit by bit, making those who saw them feel anxious. "Captain, what should we do now?" someone asked Bai Juan. Originally, their mission was to take back the things that the foreign enemy had taken out of their territory and keep China's secret. But now, not only could they not pass through this place, they had also discovered such a thing. This place was like a huge nutrient pool, and it had a deep influence on the snakes. If things were allowed to develop, more and more snakes would come over. When they grew to a certain extent and crawled out, they would all be giant pythons. A giant python might be easier to deal with for them. They could use a gun to hit its head or break it 7 inches. But for the peaceful world outside the jungle, for those white-collar workers who were still working, the old people who were eating breakfast, and the students who were reading books, it would be an unprecedented disaster. They could not let these things escape. Absolutely not. Bai Juan also clenched his right hand tightly. The handle of the gun was stained with blood. "Those puppets are very strange." "Puppets?" Li Hailu was anxious. "Captain, why are you still concerned about puppets at this time?" Bai Juan raised his eyes and glanced at him. "The snakes don't dare to approach them. Moreover, to me, some things that can exist for so many years without any damage are not too normal." After Bai Juan's reminder, everyone finally reacted. Those puppets were indeed not normal. Especially those pairs of eyes, it was as if there was really a child's soul living inside. At this moment, there was a cracking sound. Someone and something moved. They took a closer look. It was those puppets. They seemed to be pulled by invisible strings as they walked towards them step by step. Not only that, they seemed to be singing some kind of song. In the beginning, the problem core wanted to open fire. But when these puppets opened their mouths, they seemed to have lost their senses. They only felt that the voice was extremely pleasant to hear. It was like the sound of Sanskrit coming from an ancient temple, but it was also like someone was telling the most ancient story. Wave after wave, it was very sad and gentle. It could make people feel an unprecedented peace from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 1308. However, this peace only lasted for less than a few seconds. Then, their ears were replaced by other sounds. It sounded like the cry of a child. It was a very, very small cry, but it made people feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. All of a sudden, it was as if something was tugging at their legs. The soldiers took a closer look and saw that at some point in time, they were surrounded by children. Those children were wearing red and green clothes, as if they were welcoming someone's bride. All of them had big blushes on their faces, but the darkness under their eyes was very dark, as if they had not slept for many days. However, upon closer inspection, they found that the darkness was not caused by lack of sleep. It was because these children were not normal at all. Moreover, their clothes were not modern fashions, but ancient robes. That style was very familiar, as if it was the clothing patterns carved on the puppets just now. The problem armies were frightened by their own thoughts. However, these children were all looking at them with their eyes. Their bodies were all wet as if they had been drenched by the rain. Then they moved. That kind of action was indescribably strange. First, their necks moved, followed by their arms and legs. It was as if something was controlling them from behind. There were no less than 500 such children. They were densely packed as they walked towards them. Bit by bit, they closed the distance. The soldiers felt as if they were about to be devoured. They even stretched out their hands. In the next second, they all opened their mouths. Roar! The empty darkness stretched as far as the eye could see. It could not be considered a mouth at all. It was clearly a black hole that was emitting an extremely terrifying sound. The soldiers could not help but raise the guns in their hands, as if they were going to shoot in that direction. However, they did not know that what they were seeing was actually just an illusion. Among this group of people, only Bai Juan was still awake. No one knew why. Even he himself did not know how much the righteous aura on his body would make demons fear him. He pulled out his bayonet and cut off the snakes that tried to coil around him one after another. His entire body was bathed in blood, and he was like a war god that had descended from the sky. No snake dared to go forward. They could only circle around Bai Juan. But in reality, the real danger was not these snakes that were waiting for an opportunity to bite people to death. It was the Sanskrit chants that disturbed the thoughts of the problem legions. Now, they raised their guns and faced Bai Juan. Apart from Li Hailu, there were no less than 4 guns that were pointed at Bai Juan. Their expressions were filled with indescribable fear, as if they had seen the most frightening thing in their lives. However, they did not know that the person standing in front of them was not a child, but their captain. They were about to pull the trigger. A loud bang was heard. Something smashed heavily on the puppet. The surrounding air was like a barrier that had been shattered. However, in an instant, the problem core felt that the child in front of them had disappeared. When they took a closer look, their guns were actually aimed at Bai Juan. Under Bai Juan's knife, there were broken snake segments one after another. Captain. Just now, the soldiers wanted to explain. Bai Juan raised his hand and wiped the blood on his eyelids. His voice was indifferent, as if he did not care at all. Those puppets can disturb people's minds. Don't listen to things that you shouldn't listen to. What was that sound just now? Li Hailu glanced sideways at Bai Juan. If it wasn't for that sound, they would have already fired. I'm not sure. However, all of this is not over yet. Bai Juan looked at the puppets that were still moving. Just as he was about to raise his head, he saw a figure jump down from the tree and directly block in front of them. She was carrying a large military travel bag on her back. The ends of her hair were black and long. As she moved, it spread out in the air. When it landed, it spread out behind her very beautifully, directly covering the travel bag. She did not turn around, so Li Hailu and the others did not see her appearance. They only knew that it was a woman. Then, they heard her clear voice shout, "All of you, push back a little. These puppets still have thousands of years of resentment left on them. It's not good for you to absorb them. All of you, step back. Let me take care of them." As the girl spoke, she held her small arm. Only then did they notice that her fingertips seemed to be bleeding. When the blood dripped onto the ground, it made a banging sound. In other words, it was very likely that it was her blood that woke them up just now. Just as the problem legions were still studying this problem, Bai Juan, who was standing at the back, saw the back of the figure in front of him. His dark pupils suddenly trembled. It couldn't be her. His Aju should still be studying obediently at University A. 2 days ago, he had received a WeChat message from her saying that Love had recently gained 10 pounds because of her. She even swaggered around when she walked. Wait a minute. Love? Bai Juan looked over there again. He saw a large Alaska lying on the open ground with its tongue out in the thick fog. It was obvious that it was tired. Bai Juan's body trembled when he saw this. He did not care if his comrades were beside him. He picked up the petite figure that had fallen from the sky from behind. Aju was still struggling. She wanted to stretch out her fist and punch the person who had suddenly picked her up. However, as soon as her fist was out, she met that handsome and noble face. His facial features could not be any clearer. Even the gentleness and disapproval in his eyes were so familiar that they could not be any more familiar. Little brother. Aju was really too happy. She turned around and pounced on Baijuan. In the end, she did not control her strength well and successfully pushed Baijuan to the ground heavily. That exquisite and beautiful oval face was filled with pink and tender excitement. Her pair of round tiger eyes were even brighter and more beautiful. Just like that, she carried a big school bag and lay on Baijuan's body very cutely. She asked crisply, "Why are you here?" Baijuan immediately felt that his lines had been snatched away. Shouldn't he be the one who should ask this question the most? However, when facing Aju, he was always more patient than usual. His fingers wanted to touch her head before he spoke, but later on, he realized that there was still blood on his body and hands. He could only coax her in a low voice, "Be good, go down first. My body is dirty and there is blood." Oh. Aju's round tiger eyes rolled around again before she said seriously, "It's okay, I have blood on me too. Little brother, are you here to carry out a mission?" Chapter 1309. It's not important why I'm here. What's important is why you're here. Baijuan raised his eyebrows. He supported himself on the ground with one hand and supported Aju's waist with the other to help himself sit up. In the end, he couldn't help but stroke Aju's long hair. His girl suddenly appeared in front of him like this. He was caught completely off guard. Moreover, if he was not mistaken, the military uniform that Aju was wearing was a special military uniform. Unless it was his uncle's side. No other place would carry such a military bag. Moreover, based on the current situation, other than his uncle's soldiers, no one dared to come to such a place. More importantly, why did his girl join the army? Aju's small face was fierce, and her eyes were bright. She said in a dignified manner, "I'm here to support you. The higher-ups sent an order that I was needed here, so I came over. I didn't expect to see little brother." She really wanted to rub against him. Aju thought so in her heart, but she couldn't really do so. She still had a mission. "Little brother, after I deal with these puppets, I'll come and rub against you." After throwing down such a bold sentence, Aju stood up with a tiger-like aura. The soldiers were a little shocked when they saw this. Aju and the others knew each other. They were Master Bai's family members. But what did she just say? The higher-ups gave an order. What was going on? Among them, the intelligence officer was the most dumbfounded. This was because he had never seen Aju before, and he did not know that Baijuan was already married. In his impression, their Master Bai had always been a flower that could only be seen from afar and not touched. Every time the group of artistic soldiers in the army saw him, their faces would turn red. However, Master Bai did not even look at those people. It was as if these beautiful female officers were not as charming as their brothers in his eyes. Moreover, when Master Bai was not on a mission, he was extremely difficult to get close to. He would not even touch others. Now, he was actually being pounced on by a girl, and he was not angry at all. Even though that girl called him little brother. But when had Master Bai ever been so gentle to anyone? If it were not for the fact that it was so dangerous now and the timing was not right, the intelligence officer would have long pestered his teammates beside him and asked, "Who was that girl? Why was the light in Master Bai's eyes warm when he looked at her?" However, there were still a bunch of strange wooden dolls standing in front of them. Those wooden puppets were so strange that they almost shot their captain to death. There were also snakes that kept growing because of the existence of the puppets. Everything reminded them of the great dangers and challenges they faced. This mission was unexpectedly difficult. It was something they had never faced before. Aju didn't think much of it. Just as she was about to go all out, she was pulled back by Baijuan. "What are you going over there for? Do you know that it's very dangerous over there?" Little brother, believe me, I can deal with them. A Jew said solemnly, I know how to chant scriptures. Bai Juan wiped the blood on her forehead. I know that you have been chanting scriptures since you were young. Be obedient and stand behind me later. That won't do. A Jew's tiger face froze. These guys just let the snake attack little brother and almost let Master Li and the others shoot you. I have to teach them a good lesson. As if they had heard Aju's words, the puppets all turned around and looked at Aju's location with gloomy eyes. Another wave of Sanskrit came. This time, those children were not illusions. Instead, they were real figures that swayed out from the clouds. Every one of them was opening their mouths. It was so dark that people could only feel the presence of one person. Bai Juan turned his body and blocked in front of Aju. The muzzle of the gun was directly aimed at the swaying shadows. Suddenly, a gloomy voice sounded, as if countless children's voices had overlapped together. An exorcist who hasn't formed yet wants to deal with us. It's simply a fool's dream. I'll let you see now how powerful the remnant thoughts of our mother goddess are. As that voice spoke, the surroundings suddenly fell into an unprecedented gloominess. It was not an illusion. The surrounding temperature began to become cold. One after another, the problem legions leaned back to back and looked behind them. Many, many children. There were all kinds of dead faces. They walked towards them bit by bit as if they were here to collect a debt. The legendary night parade of 100 ghosts was probably referring to such a scene. The problem legions raised their guns and shot one down. Immediately, another one would follow. Moreover, they did not seem to be afraid of bullets at all. After being shot, their bodies only moved stiffly before they stood up again. At this moment, the eyes of the problem legions had already begun to sway. As expected, many things could not be explained by science. The voice continued to give orders, pounce on them and tear them apart one by one. Let them come to hell to accompany us. Especially that boastful little exorcist. Let her experience what it means to be haunted by resentment and to live a life worse than death. In an instant, more figures swarmed towards them. This time, their speed was obviously much faster. Each of them bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they pounced in Aju's direction. Lord Bai raised his long spear and was about to shoot. Right at this moment, something strange happened. At first, it was those snakes, but when they crawled halfway, they instantly changed their direction. Even the resentment of the puppets found it difficult to control them. It was as if something that they were afraid of suddenly appeared where Aju was standing. However, other than Aju, there was also the little white cat on her head. None of the Special Forces soldiers knew that it wasn't an ordinary white cat, but a mythical beast that could make all beasts turn their heads. It was one of the 4 legendary divine beasts, Bai Zhe, that often appeared in paintings of the Huaxia era. When those snakes saw Bai Zhe coming, they would definitely run away. Moreover, this time, Bai Zhe did not hide its aura like before. Later on, even the puppets seemed to be intimidated by something. They just stood there trembling all over, without any chance to return. No. Impossible. It had been thousands of years. Even if that lord was not in the Buddhist world, he would still be in the demon world. It was absolutely impossible for him to be here. Moreover, that girl was clearly just an ordinary human. She did not attract the attention of the phoenix. But why could her body emit such a huge Buddhist light? Chapter 13:10. The problem legions also noticed the difference in Aju. Everyone turned around and looked behind them. Amidst the swirling fog, the girl's long black hair fluttered in the wind. Her pale thin lips seemed to be chanting Buddhist scriptures, and those scriptures floated in the air, forming words one after another. They were like blooming flower petals, twining around her, emitting a dazzling Buddhist light. And under her feet, there seemed to be golden lotuses blooming one after another. Phoenix, Phoenix Wisdom King. The puppet seemed to be in disbelief. Its neck moved stiffly, and its eyes were filled with fear and shock. Who are you? Phoenix Wisdom King. Ajou tilted her head. I don't know her. It's impossible that you don't know her. Behind you is her Dharma idol. The puppet even started to move its legs. How could this be? How could Phoenix's Dharma idol be on someone else? Unless you are, the puppet tilted its head and met Baize's mocking gaze. It was immediately shocked. The answer was obvious. Why are you still bringing the 4 divine beasts? That's clearly one of the Emperor's mounts. Ajou was annoyed by the questions. She said angrily, Who is the Emperor? Don't always jump out one name after another. Just now, you wanted to kill little brother, right? I'll send you to reincarnate now to repay the sins you owe. We are innocent. The puppet still wanted to quibble. Sir, you are blessed by the true Buddha. You can't kill. We are all children who were killed by the ghost mother goddess back then. Shouldn't you reform us? Ajou tilted her head and said with a serious expression, I'm sending you to reincarnate to reform you. They did not want to be reincarnated. They had not killed enough people and had not taken revenge on those adults. They did not want to leave this place. At most, they would kill this person as well. In any case, she was blessed by the true Buddha. She could not see blood. In an instant, another layer of fog appeared. Ajou narrowed her eyes, which were filled with Buddhist light. Such a strong evil aura, yet you still want to reform people. Humph. You want to deceive Buddha Wooly. You clearly want to kill people and lie. I'll send you to hell now. As she spoke, Ajou moved her left hand, and the wind around her seemed to be listening to her call. Thousands of Buddhist lights surged out from the ground and rushed toward the wooden puppets. The illusory figures of the puppets all raised their hands to cover their eyes. However, they were no match for the purest Buddhist fate in the world. Even before they died, they still thought that it was Phoenix's aura. Only Phoenix could achieve Buddhahood through killing. Why did this little exorcist have the form of a phoenix? Why is this happening? And the Emperor's Baize. It was a divine beast that should have belonged to the heavenly Tao. Even if the Emperor had fallen, it should have stayed with the Emperor in the demon world. Or perhaps he would stay by Phoenix's side. After all, it was said that Baize's descendant had a new owner. But no matter what, it was impossible for that person to appear here. And there was a little exorcist with him. That exorcist, just who was she? Ah! Before the puppets died, they let out an ear-piercing and miserable scream. They wanted to regret underestimating this young girl, but they had no chance to regret it anymore. The Buddhist light descended from the sky and burned them into puddles of black water bit by bit. After the shadows formed by resentment disappeared, the puppets also began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if they had lost a layer of protective film and finally returned to their original solid state, revealing traces one after another. The fog also gradually dissipated. The sun shone through the leaves and into the forest. The soldiers looked at this scene in shock. What had they just experienced? Exorcism. A movie. Master Bai's wife could not only fight, but she could also exorcise ghosts. Was that what it meant? Why had Master Bai never told them when they were in military training in school? The soldiers collectively looked in Bai Zhuan's direction. Only then did they realize that even their Master Bai was looking at Ajou's back. His deep and beautiful peach blossom eyes seemed to be narrowed. He could not say whether he was happy or unhappy. However, according to their understanding of Master Bai, even Master Bai himself definitely did not know that his wife could exorcise ghosts. Aju still did not know that her little brother was looking at her from behind. After burying everything that needed to be buried, she stretched out her hand and beckoned the white cat to leave. Bai Zhe obediently put away the aura on its body. With a jump of its legs, it jumped onto Aju's head and wagged its tail. However, its eyes were looking at the Alaskan sled that was so afraid of it. The soldiers also noticed the abnormality of their pet. It did not have its usual domineering aura at all. Instead, all the fur on its body stood on end, and its claws were still trembling. Especially when the white cat looked at it, it actually trembled. Was this even a military dog? A large dog was actually afraid of a small white cat. The soldiers really did not want to see this embarrassing scene anymore. They decisively turned their heads and looked at their captain's little wife. Old Man was the first to speak. "Sister-in-law, you're so amazing. Can I acknowledge you as my teacher?" "Sister-in-law." Aju's round eyes rolled around. She had never heard such a title before. Old Man explained, "Captain happens to be older than all of us, so we'll call you sister-in-law. It's reasonable." When Aju heard this explanation, she was happy. Her small face flushed red as she looked at Bai Juan and then at the old man. She praised him very seriously, "You have good taste." Of course. Old Man was not old himself, so he quickly formed a thought pattern with Aju. He proudly straightened his back and asked, "Sister-in-law, what were you doing just now?" These puppets became like this because of the remaining resentment. After chanting a few Buddhist scriptures and burying a yellow talisman, they can be sent to the underworld. They are all children killed when the ghost mother goddess massacred the city. Those children could not be freed, and they had hatred in their hearts, so they were bound to the puppets. Over time, they formed the resentment of 100 ghosts, which is the scene you saw just now. They like to drag adults down to accompany them. Once someone gets close, they will be affected by them. After Aju finished speaking, she ran in front of Bai Juan. She raised her beautiful little face, meaning that she wanted Bai Juan to wipe her sweat. Of course, Bai Juan understood what she wanted to do. With a smile, he pulled her with one hand and used the back of his other clean hand to gently wipe her sweat. In the end, no matter how he looked at it, he felt that the girl he had carefully raised from a young age should not sweat. He leaned over and lowered his eyes, directly landing his thin lips on Aju's smooth and fair forehead. Chapter 13:11. Aju paused. She stretched out her two hands and covered her forehead. Her round tiger eyes widened as she said in a low voice, "No, I didn't say I wanted to kiss you. But if you want to kiss me, I won't refuse." After all, they were still newlyweds. Moreover, he had left as soon as they got married. She still owed him a honeymoon. When the mission was over, she would definitely make it up to him. Bai Juan looked at her tiger-like appearance and laughed. He lowered his head again and kissed her. Looking at this scene, everyone was speechless. The soldiers could still accept it a little. That intelligence officer was simply petrified at the side. What did their lord Bai just do? He actually took the initiative to kiss a girl. And he even kissed her twice in a row. He seemed to be in a good mood. No, that wasn't right. He should be asking why he called this girl sister-in-law. There were too many questions, and the intelligence officer really didn't know which one to ask. He was so shocked that his jaw dropped as he stared blankly. Was that person who was looking at his family with a doting gaze really their Lord Bai? This was not right. He needed to be quiet. After all, whether it was in the army or on a mission, Lord Bai seemed to have no existence in his eyes. This sudden change really made people need time to digest. After dealing with those puppets, she was kissed by the little brother again. She was indescribably happy in her heart. She hugged Bai Juan's waist and rubbed her small face against him. She looked very comfortable. As expected, the smell on little brother's body smells good. The resentment just now was too smelly. It made my head hurt. It was precisely because of little brother's presence that she was able to attract the Buddhist light to her body. Such a strong sense of righteousness. She smelled it first to get rid of the blood smell on her body. Bai Juan looked at the person in his arms who was constantly agitating. He knew that she was indeed uncomfortable, so he reached out and rubbed Aju's head. Aju felt comfortable after being rubbed. Her pair of round tiger eyes lit up again. Little brother, you should be an exorcist with me in the future. You're full of righteousness, so you're the most suitable exorcist. The few evil spirits who were standing 1 meter away nodded their heads solemnly. He was indeed suitable, so suitable that they didn't dare to go over. How could there be such a human in this world? He stood there like the sun, and his aura could burn ghosts to death. Bai Juan seemed to have noticed something behind Aju. Although he did not have the ability to identify ghosts, his natural sensitivity had already made those malicious ghosts shiver heavily. This man is so scary. Aju followed her little brother's gaze and looked over. She smiled with her eyes wide open. That's a toy my big brother gave me. He said that he caught it from the underworld. Little brother, can you see them? Hearing this, the problem core looked at each other. What was it that was caught from the underworld? Was there anyone else here other than them? Bai Juan tidied up his girl's messy hair and smiled faintly. I can't see, but I can feel something. As expected of little brother. Aju worshipped Bai Juan for everything. They have followed me all the way. Now that they see little brother, they must be afraid of the righteousness on little brother's body and don't dare to come over. I will pack them up later. Otherwise, little brother will burn them. They are usually quite obedient and can eat little ghosts. When the time comes, they can still be used. Aju had a habit since she was young. When she talked to Bai Juan, it was as if she was chanting Buddhist scriptures. Her mouth moved again and again as she muttered. Bai Juan and Li Hailu were used to it, but the rest of the people were a little confused. What them? What eating little ghosts? However, there was one problem that the old men in the army could understand. Just now, we were controlled by those puppets. Only the captain was awake. Is sister-in-law talking about this? Aju looked at him and nodded. You also felt the righteousness all over little brother's body. They could only feel the cold air of the captain. For example, during training, he would run another 20 laps and so on. Also, the scene of the captain fighting a group of snakes alone just now was especially like a war god. It was really not something that an ordinary person could do. Speaking of which, those snakes seemed to have disappeared. Would this place not be like that again? But at this time, Aju spoke again. I keep feeling that something is missing here. It was taken away by the enemy. We have to find the last person within 3 hours. The thing is on him. Bai Juan spoke in a deep voice. Once the mission was mentioned, his eyes returned to their usual coldness. Let's start to match now. Let's go find him. The intelligence officer was a little worried. But Captain, which direction should we go next? The instrument still couldn't be used. I have a way. Aju took out a compass from her large military backpack. This can locate yin and yang. If the thing is really in the hands of the enemy, the compass will automatically point to the direction of the most yin. We just need to follow the needle. It's the west. Let's complete the mission together. I finally met up with you guys. Just now, I was worried that you guys wouldn't be able to hold on until I came. I didn't expect that little brother was the troop that I wanted to support. As Aju spoke, she turned her head and hugged Baizhuan and rubbed against him like a silly little tiger. After hearing Aju's last sentence, the people of the problem army finally realized that she was wearing a military uniform, and that military uniform. The intelligence officer's eyes suddenly constricted. You are, from the Tang sect. Yes. Aju tilted her head, and her tiger eyes were beautiful. Is there a problem? The old man was also shocked. Captain, how come we never knew that sister-in-law was from the Tang sect? Wasn't she still a student of University O last time? I also want to ask this question. Baizhuan pulled his girl over and said indifferently, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's find the thing first. Yes. The problem army knew their captain very well, so they could talk to relax their nervous mood just now. But at the same time, they could not forget that what they really wanted to do was to complete the mission. Aju's appearance also reminded them that this was not an ordinary mission. They did not know if they would face more unbelievable things next. However, there should be no problem. Just the fact that Aju could help them locate the direction had solved a big problem for them. Following the compass, their speed suddenly increased by a lot. But at this time, for some reason, the sky suddenly darkened. Even the wind brought a wet and sticky feeling. It was as if someone was standing beside them. Chapter 13:12. There was a pungent smell of blood. Even if she could not see clearly, she could still sense it. But the strange thing was that when she turned around, she could not see anyone. What? What was going on? Aju's round tiger eyes narrowed. She was about to speak. Just as she was about to open her mouth, a figure stretched out its claws and grabbed at her. Before Aju could react, Baizhuan turned sideways and blocked in front of her, tightly protecting her in his arms. There was a tearing sound. It was Baizhuan's military uniform that had been cut. No, it was not just the military uniform. It was clearly the sound of skin and flesh exploding. Aju was really angry. She clenched her fists tightly and was about to fly towards that person. Baizhuan reached out and pulled her back, fixing her in his arms. His voice was very low, as if the injured person was not him at all. Be good, stay where I can touch you. Aju was unwilling to give up. She had to listen to her little brother again. She rolled her big eyes and directly scattered a few malicious spirits. As soon as the malicious ghosts came out, they were burned by the righteous energy on Baizhuan's body. They all retreated a meter before saying, "Little master. What was that thing just now? You're kind." Aju had a small face, and her cheeks were bulging. To think that I used to think that you ghosts were quite cute. I didn't expect that you would hurt people. The malicious ghosts were speechless. When did they become cute? Ordinary people would be scared half to death when they saw them. Logically speaking, they should be gloomy as soon as they came out. They should drag people down to accompany them. The reason why they were so cute now was because the one who caught them was a devil. The one who accompanied them looked like a Buddha, but in fact, she was still a little devil. She was even more afraid than the devil. She always told them to be vegetarian with her. Vegetarian. Did she ever consider how they felt as malicious ghosts? Moreover, little master, you can't kill us with one blow. The ones who hurt your little brother were really not us. Aju narrowed her eyes. Anyway, she could not hurt her little brother. Go and catch that malicious ghost just now and eat it. Yes, little master. A few malicious ghosts flashed at the same time, bringing out a gloomy feeling that was much more than before. In fact, the malicious ghosts here could not compare to the evil aura on their bodies. After all, they had also come from the 18th level of hell. Of course, there were pros and cons. The advantage was that they were definitely older than the other party. Everyone knew that ghosts were more powerful the older they were. However, the downside was that they had stayed in the 18th level of hell for too long and had not been stained with blood. He was afraid that it would take some effort to deal with the malicious spirits around the Mother Goddess's tomb. However, there was one thing that they didn't dare to tell the little master. That stupid ghost just now, without even looking, stretched out her claws and scratched the righteous man. He reckoned that it must be hiding in regret now. Perhaps its entire claw had been burned off. The specters were right. The ghostly shadow was indeed regretting its actions. It stared at its own black fingertips. That burning sensation made it want to tear everything apart. That man was clearly an ordinary human. It had just killed several humans and eaten their souls. Why was this human like this? It had to be said that the wandering ghosts in the outside world were nothing compared to the experienced ghosts in the 18 levels of hell. Those malicious ghosts had seen many people underground, so they naturally understood the situation. A person like Bai Juan was someone they would never touch even if they were beaten to death. Other than the 3 generations of their ancestors, they were also full of righteousness. Their hands were clearly stained with blood, but they were not tainted at all. Such a person was even more difficult to deal with than those from the heavenly Tao. To put it simply, if a person harmed him, he would die an unnatural death. If a ghost harmed him, he would die a horrible death. However, the more distant he was from the world, the easier it was for him to kill the people around him, or his lifespan was extremely short. In short, his life would be lonely and he would not have a good ending. The malicious ghosts were still thinking that if their little master had not appeared, such a person would definitely be unhappy more than happy in this world. Or perhaps, he would feel that everything he did would be boring. His career and future were originally within reach for him. Not to mention women. But they also felt that this man was actually still a virgin. How much did he like the little master to be able to protect his body to such an extent? However, it was precisely because he was still a pure body that he could soothe the resentment on the little master's body to protect the little master's true Buddha body. Therefore, that stupid ghost just now could have provoked anyone, but he had to provoke these 2 people. He was really courting death. A black whirlwind rose up. The 4 malicious ghosts surrounded the evil ghost who was still lamenting and pitying his arm in the middle. It was difficult for humans to find ghosts, but it was extremely easy for ghosts to find ghosts. That evil ghost looked at the malicious ghosts that suddenly appeared in front of him, and his fangs pierced out. He mumbled a bunch of words, all of which were in ghost language. The translation was, "We are all ghosts. It's fine if you don't help me, but why do you help those humans? Let's work together to kill all those humans and then eat their souls, especially that little girl's soul. Haven't you noticed? How sweet is the aura on her body? Her soul must be very nutritious." When the 4 malicious ghosts heard its suggestion, their hands trembled in fear. Damn it, was there something wrong with this stupid ghost? The Buddhist fate on the little master was so obvious. Not only did she have the Phoenix Dharma idol, but she also had the divine beast by Zay. Although divine beasts were not very useful to malicious ghosts like them, they were mainly used to deal with ferocious beasts and demons. Damn it, after being a ghost for so many years, they had never heard of that little devil in the demon world. No, that's not right, it should be the big devil now. Was he a sister Khan and a brother Khan? If anyone dared to touch his sister or brother, he would make them regret it so much that their intestines would turn green before he swallowed them. In order to show that they had never wanted to eat the little master, the 4 malicious ghosts originally wanted to let this evil ghost go. Now that they heard this, without saying a word, he forced the evil ghost to the front of Aju with both hands. "Little master, you can kill it. We definitely won't stop you." Aju looked at the evil ghost that was emitting black fog and was about to make a move. However, she was stopped by Baijuan. Because the evil ghost's hand was stained with Baijuan's blood, it had faintly revealed its original form. Aju turned her head. She did not understand why her little brother was stopping her. However, Baijuan's eyes darkened. That usually gentle and handsome face carried a viciousness that had never been seen before. Was this the thing that wanted to scratch you just now? Chapter 13:13. Aju nodded her head. She still did not understand why the little brother wanted to stop her. Baijuan moved his fingers, and his voice was a little deep. "You just said that the blood on my body can exorcise ghosts." "Yes." Aju replied as she said, "Little brother, don't stop me. I have to influence this guy so that when it comes out in the future, it won't scratch randomly." Before Aju could finish her words, there was a swoosh sound. Baijuan cut his palm with the hand that was holding the knife. Then, without any hesitation, he turned his hand and stabbed at the malicious ghost that was covered in black fog. Originally, things in the human world could not hurt ghosts at all. However, Baijuan's blood was different. When the evil ghost's heart was pierced, it only saw that Baijuan's eyes were cold and icy. They were like the ancient well water in the cemetery. There was not a single ripple. It was so cold that it made people tremble from the bottom of their hearts. This was the first time that the evil ghost had seen a human show such a gaze. Moreover, the one he killed was a ghost. Could it be that he was not afraid at all? The boiling blood followed the blade and seeped into the evil ghost's internal organs. There was no part of its body that was not in pain. Such a human was simply an existence that was even more terrifying than it was. Why didn't these people notice it? One thought was a god, and the other was a devil. What exactly was it that could make this man so cold to the bone, but there was a lingering gentleness in his eyes. Before the evil ghost died, it saw that the man pulled out his knife and walked in front of the girl. Then, he touched her head and said in a deep voice, "Anyone who wants to hurt you, I hope that I can personally get rid of it." That kind of righteousness. It turned out that he could kill ghosts when he met ghosts and gods when he met gods when he met gods. The evil ghost looked at the sky and opened its mouth because of the joy. The burning sensation devoured it again and again until its internal organs were burned to ashes. It did not even have the chance to go to hell to be reincarnated. It was directly beaten into ashes. The 4 malicious ghosts that Aju had brought over also trembled when they saw this. He actually killed an evil ghost without batting an eyelid. At the beginning, these malicious ghosts only thought that Baijuan was an existence that could not be provoked, but they were not very afraid of him. After all, as long as they did not touch him, it would be fine. But who knew? When this man killed ghosts, he was simply terrifying without batting an eyelid. That action even seemed to carry a coldness that even an exorcist did not possess. What was even more frightening was that when he knew that his blood could exorcise ghosts, he didn't even think before cutting his own palm. Not only was he ruthless to his enemies, but he was also ruthless to himself. This kind of person was very suitable to be a devil. Shouldn't he stand in the light and be full of righteousness? The evil spirits were now rejoicing over the fact that they had not provoked this man earlier. Little Master was right. He was too suitable to be an exorcist. In this case, there was simply no need to bring any exorcism artifacts, because he himself was an artifact. However, Aju did not think so. She looked at Baijuan's left hand that was hanging down, and her big tiger eyes were filled with heartache. Baijuan followed her gaze and looked over. He reached out and rubbed Aju's head. It's just a small injury. Compared to these, what he couldn't tolerate was the way the evil ghost looked at Aju just now. He shouldn't have killed that evil spirit so quickly. He should have let it experience the true meaning of pain bit by bit. Although Baizhuan had already made Aju not care, he also raised his hand and let her bandage his wound for him. However, Aju still felt bad in her heart. She was already here, but she still let little brother get injured. She was too useless. Her mother had said that after getting married, she had to protect her other half well. Little brother was so good-looking, and he was always missed by people. Now, even ghosts would not let him go. In the future, she definitely could not let her guard down. She had to protect little brother well. Aju told herself so. She did not care what the wrong positioning was. For the rest of the journey, she walked in front and let Baizhuan follow behind her. Of course, their hands were still held together. When the problem soldiers saw this, they all expressed that sister-in-law, the captain's injury was really nothing to him. You really didn't have to treat him like a porcelain doll. Moreover, where could you find such a cold and murderous porcelain doll? In the future, the ones who should be protected were those ghosts. The 4 black fog-filled things behind you seemed to be trembling all the way. Did you really not see how afraid they were of the captain? Only you would treat the captain as a porcelain doll. The problem soldiers who had been shown off their love complained while not forgetting to move forward quickly. If we continue forward, we will reach the border. Li Heilu's forehead was full of sweat. Where exactly is that guy? Baizhuan's eyes narrowed, and his ears twitched. He turned his eyes to look at the small cluster of forest that was not far away and looked over fiercely. He lowered his voice and said, 8:00 on the left in front. Be quiet and fast. Surround and attack. With his order, the 6 of them quickly raised their guns and spread out. The one walking at the end of the forest was one of the enemy troops who had invaded this time. His face was covered in blood and sweat. Along the way, he had experienced a fear that he had never experienced before. After he finished this business, he would never step into the territory of Huaxia again. Other than those blade soldiers who had forced them into a corner, there were also too many strange things here. A total of 18 of them had come. Each of them was a top-notch expert, but now, he was the only one left. They also knew that there was a person in the Huaxia army who could not be underestimated. As long as this person was around, they would not be able to walk in easily and walk out easily. Viper. He had once seen that person shoot from afar when he was crossing Burma. He also knew the record that Viper had set. If it were not for Viper, they would not have encountered such a situation. They could have taken the things and left, but because of Viper, they had no choice but to abandon the jeep and the plane. In the end, only he was still alive. The intruder hugged the thing in his hand tightly. As long as he persisted a little longer, he would be able to cross the national defense line. At that time, even if Viper rushed here, they would not dare to shoot. Huaxia was so cowardly. Unlike them, they did not have to abide by so many treaties. Thinking of this, the corners of the intruder's mouth could not help but reveal a hint of contempt and complacency. However, at this moment, there was a swoosh. Chapter 13-14. A long knife cut through the wind and stabbed straight into the center of the intruder's eyes. If he hadn't dodged in time, the knife would have cut off his arm. The intruder turned around and saw a group of people in a square formation with 4 corners in the north, south, east, and west. They had already firmly trapped him in this small area. The person in the lead was the Special Forces soldier they had never wanted to meet, codenamed Viper. Until now, he did not know the other party's name, where he was from, or how old he was. He only knew that Viper was very young, but he was so vicious that it was difficult to ignore him. The intruder licked his tongue and took another step forward. Ha! He had crossed the line. As long as he crossed the line, they could not do anything to him. Bai Juan also noticed this. It was obvious that this intruder was taking advantage of the international contract. Once he crossed the line of defense, they would be violating the contract if they shot him again. They could not make a move. At the very least, they could not rashly make a move. When the intruder saw that Bai Juan did not raise his hand to shoot at him, he raised his head and laughed loudly. You Chinese people, no matter how many years have passed, are all sick men of East Asia. His intonation was very strange, with a unique exotic Chinese accent. It made Bai Juan's eyes suddenly sink. If you have the ability, then shoot me. Not to mention shooting me to death. Even if you shoot me, your entire team will have to go to the military court. If you become a citizen of our country, it will be much better than what you are now. In that case, we can sit down, drink a cup of black beer, and pick up a few girls. Oh right, the girls in your country are also very good at sleeping. As long as they see Western faces like us, they will scramble to pounce on us. Ha 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 ha, it's really a waste not to sleep with them. The one beside you is not bad. I'll let it go this time. Let's meet again next time. Next time, we'll meet again. Every word of the intruder was challenging the background of the problem army. Li Heilu's hands were clenched so tightly that they made cracking sounds. The old man picked up his weapon and wanted to rush forward. You can't go over. Bai Juan blocked with his arm. His feet are on the other side of the national defense line. The old man gritted his teeth. Then we can only watch this bastard leave. Captain, I can't do it. I'll go over. Isn't it just going to court? When the time comes, just say that it's my fault. I'll do it. Motherfucker, I can't stand such a piece of trash speaking in front of us. Even if someone has to go to court, that person shouldn't be you. Bai Juan glanced sideways, and a cold light flashed across his eyes. Aju also knew about the contract. Her round eyes rolled around as she held Bai Juan's hand and said, Little brother, I'll let the ghost deal with him. This way, no one will know. No. Bai Juan rejected Aju's suggestion without thinking. Aju was stunned. The 2 strands of hair on her head were still standing up. Why? All of your abilities should be used to deal with wraiths and demons. Bai Juan lowered his eyes and raised his hand to rub her little face. If you can't deal with humans, it will affect your true Buddha and ruin your merit. Hearing this, Aju stopped talking. A few wraiths were talking in ghost language not far away from her. Little master, this man is right. You can't instruct us to deal with humans. That will result in bad consequences. In the end, the bad consequences will befall you and affect your body. Aju knew all of this, but she would rather be in poor health than let her little brother be mocked like this. He was supposed to be an indomitable person who had always been standing in the clouds. This time, because of the treaty, he could not make a move. Aju puffed up her cheeks and looked at the intruder with her round tiger eyes. Chapter 13-15. Before he died, he only realized one thing, and that was that what people had advised him was not wrong. He should not have come to this border guarded by poisonous snakes. Because no matter how high the chances of winning were, that person could also make you come and go without returning. It was already over for regret. Lux did not become that accident. Instead, as soon as he died, his soul was dragged down by the surrounding malicious spirits and torn into several pieces. Aju looked at Bai Juan's bleeding arm. She finally knew why there were always so many wounds on his body. Even if she said that she wanted to check, he was just joking. He would not really let her touch his wounds. She still remembered that when he was young, his body was the cleanest. It was good everywhere, especially the back. At that time, she was still very young and had peeked at him bathing. At first, his face was very red. In the end, he allowed her to bring her little wooden fish and soak in the bathtub with him. At that time, she truly understood that their body structures were indeed different. Aju had always felt that a person like her little brother should be perfect and flawless. He was beautiful everywhere. Because her little brother was indeed like that. Learning came first. Swimming came first. Playing games also came first. There was nothing that her little brother was not good at. Later, her little brother wanted to be a soldier. Not only for the Bai family, but also for her. Aju blinked her big eyes, which were red. She used the back of her hand to cover her little nose. With a stern face, she did not cry. She just squatted there and bandaged Bai Juan's wound. She kept hugging Bai Juan's uninjured arm and said in a dignified manner, "I'll listen to you well in the future. I'll do whatever you say." Silly girl. Bai Juan stretched out a hand and rubbed her soft cheek. This was the first time that he felt warmth in his heart after carrying out a mission. It was really good to have such a person by his side. The warmth that was within reach was really good. With such a person at the first moment, no matter what, she would always care about you. It was enough. He did not need his girl to be so obedient. Why did she have to be so obedient? She could do whatever she wanted. He had the right to dote on his girl. Bai Juan turned his eyes and kissed Aju's head. Then, he reached out and hugged her in his arms. Anyway, she didn't mind that he was covered in blood. Even after witnessing his life, she would not think that the two of them were not compatible. "In my lifetime, I met you." He was truly blessed, no one disturbed them. At this moment, everyone knew that their captain needed such an embrace. The people in the problem army looked at the military uniform that Bai Juan had placed on the ground. Their captain was very likely to be dismissed. But no matter what, the mission was completed. They killed all the invaders and recovered the secret. The secret was divided into two parts. In addition to a very old scroll of paper that was contained in a bamboo tube, the rest was a pure black ring. The shape of the ring was very strange. It didn't look like something worn by an ancient king, and there were no records of it in history. As for which of these two items should be taken back and which should not be taken back, the Corps had no clue at all. After all, the higher-ups had instructed them to only take back one secret. Aju also stood there and studied the two things. She looked at them with her round tiger eyes for a long time. Suddenly, she raised her hand and knocked on her head. "I remember where I've seen such a ring before." "Where?" The problem army collectively turned their heads to look at Aju. Aju's exquisite little face revealed a trace of contemplation. "In my house, my father, my father, has several such rings. My big brother also has one. Sometimes, they wear it." The problem army decisively did not take this answer seriously. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows. His lips were a little pale because of the loss of blood. "Your father's thing. It's a little similar." The tip of Aju's nose twitched, and her face was full of certainty. "The aura is also similar. 90% of it is his. No one can have a stronger demonic aura than my father." Bai Juan had never forgotten the first time he saw Aju's father. That man did not seem to belong to this world. He wore black gloves on his hands. Just by standing there, it was as if he could make all the objects lose their beauty. There was also the master's reaction at that time and the speed of his father-in-law's walking. Bai Juan even suspected that he did not walk at all. Instead, he flew. Perhaps even if he flew, he would not be as fast as him. He thought that his girl had been fated with Buddha since she was young. She was blessed by the true Buddha. Because it was inconvenient at home, she was sent to the temple. Did that inconvenient refer to the fact that the demonic aura and the Buddhist aura were incompatible? In other words, his father-in-law, CEO Ju, who even today made the CEOs of the business world tremble in fear, was actually very likely a demon. However, why is your father's thing here? And it was placed together with the confidential documents. Bai Juan's eyes flashed. Could it be that this ring should have been placed where we passed by just now? Yes. A Ju hugged Bai Juan's waist. Little brother, you're so smart. Why didn't I think of that? I seem to have become too stupid recently. Father's things are here. The demonic aura is so strong that it has suppressed the resentment that covers this land all year round, forming a relative balance. Just now, this guy took away father's ring, breaking this balance. That's why the resentment surged up and formed such a thick fog. Especially since this is the tomb of the Japanese mother goddess, those living beings will also be affected. They crazily absorb the resentment and then continue to grow. Back then, father must have also placed this ring here so that the Japanese mother goddess would never see the light of day. Speaking of which, father and the Japanese mother goddess still had some grudges. He had beaten her until her soul was scattered. However, the Japanese mother goddess was a Buddha after all. Her remnant thoughts affected this place. She must have been waiting for an opportunity to be resurrected. However, with father's ring, she would never be resurrected. This was because it was impossible for a place with strong demonic aura to produce a Buddhist fate. Yes, father was as ruthless as ever. The problem core were already dumbfounded when they heard this. Father. Demonic aura. Buddhist fate. Ajo also knew that they did not understand, so she said with a fierce face, in short, as long as we put the ring back to its original place, the living beings here will also return to their original appearance. This was the principle of all things reinforcing and restraining each other. As expected, after listening to Aju's words and putting the ring back to the puppet's location, the forest completely cleared up. Those snakes also no longer surged over crazily. Everything returned to its original appearance. Their mission this time was really completed. However, did the completion of the mission mean that they were going to separate? Chapter 13-16. The problem soldiers turned their heads, looking like they wanted to say something but hesitated. Especially Li Heilu's gaze, he looked at Bai Juan and then at Aju. He knew that for Bai Juan, no kind of punishment could be worse than Aju leaving him. But it was indeed about time. They had to go back and report. Master Bai. Li Heilu licked his dry lips and said, "We should go." Aju, originally, it was very difficult to say goodbye. Unexpectedly, Aju immediately took it. Her pair of tiger eyes were round. I'll go with you guys too. The mission was completed too quickly. I still have a lot of time. I can go and see which army little brother is in. Don't reject me. The people of the Tang sect have the right to enter any army. Let's go. If there aren't enough seats on the plane, I'll sit in little brother's arms. I still have to bring instant noodles for my senior brothers and sisters. Sometimes, when Aju spoke, she was like a little monk chanting Buddhist scriptures. Her face was fair and tender, and her small mouth kept muttering. Moreover, when she said these words, she kept dragging her big backpack. She looked very cute. When the problem soldiers heard that, they felt that it was right. The Tang sect had the right to enter and leave any army. They were immediately happy. They turned around and said to Bai Juan, "Master Bai, now you can bring sister-in-law home. Let those people know that you are not gay at all." Gay. When a Jew heard this word, she immediately raised her head. Her big tiger eyes sparkled as she looked at Bai Juan. Bai Juan pressed her head into his arms and hugged her with one hand. "Don't listen to these people's nonsense. It's not that we're talking nonsense. It's those people in the army who are suspecting you." The problem soldiers looked at each other and some of them had bad looks on their faces. "You've never touched a woman, right? Those people who confessed to Master Bai didn't even care about them. I'm a married man. Why should I care about the girls outside?" Bai Juan asked in a very calm voice, "Don't think that I don't know what you guys have done in the past." The problem soldiers' backs trembled. All of them fell silent, but there was still a sneaky smile on their faces. He had thought that there would be nothing left for him to do at this point. Unexpectedly, a Jew turned her head and looked at them with her tiger eyes. "Little brother, what have they done? Have they taken you to a bad place? I knew that there were many people who would destroy our relationship. But little brother, don't worry. When we return to the army, I will teach them a good lesson. The next time someone takes you to a bad place, I will take a photo of him and make him unable to find a wife for the rest of his life." The problem army. Wait a minute. That last move was too ruthless. Good girl. Bai Juan patted his girl's head and laughed. You heard it. Don't lead me astray in the future. The problem legions. Who is the one who led who astray? Did Lord Bai need to be led astray? He was bad to the bone, and other than the fact that he didn't get close to women, he was worse than anyone else. Little brother, I believe you. A Jew raised her small face and said seriously, "It's not easy for you to come out of the mud without being stained." The problem legions, this topic couldn't be discussed any further. They would definitely vomit blood. "Well, sister-in-law, I've been wanting to ask since just now. Your military school bag is so bulging. Is it filled with a lot of special weapons from the Tang sect?" This sentence was said by the old man. A Jew shook her head. "No, it's all food." "Oh, right, I've been hungry since just now. I'll eat some biscuits to fill my stomach first." As she said that, she really opened the big military school bag and took out the things. She raised her hand and gave Bai Juan a jar of red date 8 treasures porridge. "Little brother, drink this. It's to replenish your blood." Bai Juan took it and held it in his hand. He did not open it immediately. The problem legions at the side were really dumbfounded. Who didn't carry guns or landmines on a mission, but a lot of food? A Jew held a biscuit in her mouth and asked them if they wanted to eat it. Seeing that no one moved, she carried the big school bag again. Thus, along the way, the problem legions saw a Jew eating. Moreover, when she ate, she did not forget to give their captain a bite. This show of affection was too eye-catching. Military planes usually flew very quickly. It did not take long for them to reach Bai Juan's army from the border. However, people had not forgotten the fact that he had taken off his military uniform. Once he took off that uniform, it was very likely that the captain would no longer be a soldier. The young man turned his eyes and looked at the handsome and noble side profile of their captain. For some reason, his throat felt a little uncomfortable. He thought that perhaps this was the case. Under the flourishing age, when ordinary people were enjoying their peaceful years, when those people were still looking forward to love and happiness, there would always be people who would carry a heavy burden and move forward for the light of the homes. They would use their lives as blades and stain their hands with blood. They would not forget the past and would not be afraid of the future. Their captain was such a hero. Of course, Aju knew what these problem legions were worried about. But she did not think that there was anything to worry about. If her little brother could not stay in the original army, she would poach him to the Tang sect. It was decided. She would report to her senior brothers and sisters in a while. If they did not agree, she would not bring them instant noodles. However, according to Aju's understanding of them, instant noodles could be above everything. There was nothing that a box of instant noodles could not solve. If there was, then 2 boxes. In short, she would bribe all her senior brothers and sisters. It was just that Aju felt that the original army here might not let Brother Xiao go. When she was in the Tang sect, she had already heard of Little Brother's battle achievements. Apart from his merits, Little Brother's family background determined that he would be a chief in the future. Moreover, the chief of the original army was already handing over the important position to him. She might not be able to poach him away. When Aju thought of this, her usually fair and tender little face actually had a hint of melancholy. Not enough to eat. This question was asked by Baijuan. There was still a faint smell of blood on his body, but it did not smell bad at all. Instead, the way he bent his knees was especially masculine, and that handsome face that would make Aju feel that it was good-looking whenever she looked at it. She wanted to rub against Little Brother again. She would rub against him when she returned to the army. Seeing that she did not answer, Baijuan simply picked up a small spoon and made a mouthful of red date porridge for her. He fed it into her mouth and coaxed her in a low voice, "We'll be there in 3 minutes. When we reach the army, let them steam big buns for us to eat." Speaking of which, Aju had been out for so long. It was indeed time for her to be hungry. A child's stomach could not help but be hungry. Aju also realized that no matter how old she was, her little brother would always raise her like this. This would not do. She had to let her little brother realize that she was an adult and had the ability to pounce on him. Chapter 13-17. When the military plane landed, many people surrounded it. Basically, they were all soldiers in the army. Every time Master Bai went out, they would be worried. Although they did not know what mission Master Bai was carrying out, such a mission was definitely not simple. This time was the same. When they saw that Baijuan was covered in blood, they immediately rushed over. Of course, there were female soldiers inside. After all, the troops here were different from other troops. The Crown Prince's army was the most numerous. However, what surprised those soldiers who liked to cause trouble was that Master Bai was actually supported down by a young girl. Supported by a young girl. Did he not shake off the other party's hand? There was even a faint smile on his face. They had followed Master Bai for so long, why didn't they know that Master Bai would smile like this? It was either a cold smile, an evil smile, or a half smile. No matter what kind of smile it was a sign that they were going to be specially trained. But this time, they actually saw gentleness in Master Bai's eyes. Gentleness? Master Bai still had that kind of thing. It must be because they had greeted the plane the wrong way. The female military doctors beside them also saw Aju. Some were envious, while others were subtle. That's right, it was indeed subtle. Aju also saw it. After thinking for a moment, she also knew that her little brother was going to take the confidential documents that he had snatched back and immediately report back. Therefore, she did not say anything. She only called Li Hailu to the side when he was still laughing with his hands on the shoulders of the soldiers. "Brother Hailu, I want to ask you something." Li Hailu had been a little tyrant since he was young. When he grew up, he was also a playboy. However, he had never shown that side of him in front of Aju. He would always treat Aju like this. Tell me, I'm listening. What do you want to ask? Aju had a serious look on her little tiger face. Was someone among those people peeping at you just now? Peeping? Those people. Li Hailu paused for a moment. Then, he thought of the scene at the airport just now and immediately said, "Are you talking about those female military doctors?" Yes. Aju sat cross-legged, looking very serious in a meeting. Li Hailu also sat with her, but in his heart, he thought that he had to slander his good friend no matter what. He sighed leisurely and said, "To be honest, Aju, it's fortunate that you came. In fact, for so many years, it has always been your brother Hailu who has been protecting your little brother from women. I've been watching him for you for so many years. You don't know that every woman who comes here is interested in your little brother. However, this can't be helped. After all, Baizhuan is indeed handsome. I admit this, so Aju, don't blame your little brother too much." Li Hailu wanted to see little Herculean's jealous expression. If he could help his good friend with some trouble, it would be best for him to have some fun. Who would have thought that after hearing his words, Aju actually cupped her small face with both hands and said decisively, "I got it." What do you know? Li Hailu was a little confused when he heard this, so he decided to ask shamelessly. Aju carried her schoolbag very seriously and stood up. "I want to sleep with my little brother so that he can have a sense of belonging." Li Hailu was speechless. Master Bai was a man. Why would he want a sense of belonging? Also, wait a minute, what did you just say? Sleep with Master Bai. Li Hailu was really dumbfounded this time. Aju's thoughts had never changed since she was young. She would say whatever she wanted. It was probably because of this that she firmly controlled Master Bai. After all of Master Bai's twists and turns did not seem to be very powerful in front of Aju. But, he clearly wanted to sow discord. Why did it become Aju wanting to sleep with someone? Did he indirectly become a godly assistant? Li Hailu touched his chin. Not bad. He was looking forward to seeing Master Bai being pushed down by someone. Speaking of which, no matter how powerful Baizhuan was usually, his strength was definitely not comparable to Aju's. This was going to be a good show. Li Hailu chuckled and followed her. He tactfully arranged for Aju to enter Baizhuan's room. Every time after returning from a mission, Master Bai would have to stay by himself for 3 days. It just so happened that he could use it now. Of course, there was also one unhappy thing, which was the examination that they had to face every time they returned. After carrying out a mission, they would go through some necessary interrogation. The results of each interrogation would indicate whether they were suitable to carry out a mission again. Some people would have a mental breakdown because of this, while others would be suspected. They were still fine because Baizhuan had been under a lot of pressure, so they did not need to be so tired. In fact, the special forces were like this. When they carried out missions outside, some people would always be a little worried that they would betray them. After all, the border was too important. It was just that if they asked too much, it was inevitable that they would be a little disappointed. Li Hailu only hoped that there would be a breakthrough to solve this matter. Pa! The lights were turned on. Baizhuan sat in the room with an indifferent expression. His left hand was still injured, but this did not affect him from turning his head and lighting a cigarette. He looked at the few chiefs and a psychiatrist opposite him and curled his lips into a smile. What do you want to ask? You can ask. Why are you using a light on me? Old Xiao was the first to cough. With a press of his finger, the incandescent lamp was extinguished. You took off your military uniform and did it. This question was a question for Baizhuan. Baizhuan nodded. I didn't take a gun and took off my military uniform. It's a personal grudge. You can't say that. It was a diplomat. The other side won't accept such an explanation. You have to tell me what personal grudge you have with Lawrence. Bai Juan raised his eyebrows and said in a very indifferent voice, he shot me, and I was defending myself. Also, Secretary Lin, explaining to the outside world is what you should do as a diplomat. Don't tell me you still want me to teach you. The diplomat's face turned pale, and he was vaguely angry. Chief Zhao. Bai Juan is right. This is a diplomatic matter. You guys go and worry about it. We soldiers are big bores. How can we know so much? Chief Zhao waved his hand. All right. I'm going to take him down to eat. You guys should go and do what you need to do. Do you really need old Master Bai to personally come out? The diplomat thought about the other party's identity and was indeed afraid. He shrank his neck back. Bai Juan tilted his head and smiled. He tidied up his clothes and stood up. He said, today's steamed buns are vegetarian. Steam more. Chief Zhao was speechless. Bastard. Did he look like a chef in the kitchen? He was his chief. Did the chief understand? Forget it. Seeing that this kid had made a great contribution to their army, old Zhao, would tolerate him. Chief Zhao took a deep breath and hung up the phone to the kitchen. Tell them that the steamed buns are vegetarian today. It's not that I want to eat, it's your Master Bai who wants to eat. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.